Today's class is primarily the F5 202 pre-sale certification, and this is mostly for partners that are engineers that are like pre-sales or solutions architects. So if you're looking more for administration type certification, that will be tomorrow. But what we're going to do today, we're going to cover a couple things. We're gonna go over just a little overview of the test registration, which we covered a little bit yesterday. And then we're going to go into the topics. And again, these topics are kind of covered in the blueprints. And we do have, we are going to share this presentation. There is on that F5 Cloud Docs site that we posted yesterday for the one-on-one attendees. There's also a link to some of the content there, some of the study guides there. Exam registration, pretty much same process. First thing I recommend, creating yourself an account on certification.f5.com. Definitely, if you're gonna, from what I've been told, if you're gonna use this for yourself, for this particular account, use your personal email, because maybe you might work for a reseller one day and then you move to another one. You want to make sure that that same email stays with you. Also, as you register there, once you have this, you're gonna fill out your information. You're gonna get that certification ID, kind of like what we talked about yesterday on the one-on-one test. That ID identifies, it's like a long digit number, that identifies you, so you can actually register for the exam either on Pearson VUE or Prometric. And then that gets associated with your account when you log into Pearson VUE. And you're going to follow those directions, and once you got that set up, then you'll be able to take this exam only if you have passed the one-on-one test. So that's one thing I want to bring up. Because sometimes users have called me back and say, hey, can I just go and take the 202? Unfortunately, you can't. You have to take the one-on-one test, pass that. Then when you go back to this website to look at your history, you'll be given the permission to take either the 202 exam or the 201.
Okay.
All right.
One other thing, if you guys use your own personal email for this exam and you're working for a partner and you pass, right, that gives you a certification that can be used for your partner's status, right, silver, gold, or platinum. Make sure that you or whoever does it in your organization, make sure that the channel account manager for you knows that you did that. Because otherwise, if you do not use a partner one, it does not show up in our Unity Plus, and your partner, your employer doesn't get credit for it.
Exactly, and that's very important. So just to show you, we kind of went over this yesterday on the certification tracks. Again, this was here where it says Application Delivery Fundamentals. That's the class we had yesterday, the 101 class. If you pass that test, you don't get a certification. All that's just a prerequisite. But once you pass this, you have two tracks you can go. You can either become a certified administrator, which is the 201 exam, and then for us today, we're focusing on this one, the sales professional. One thing, just a background of this test, Leif, myself, and Mickey, we helped develop this test before, where we got a lot of partners that came back to us and say, hey, my engineers are mostly pre-sales. They're not doing a lot of hands-on stuff every day. So as a result of that, we created this exam and this certification just to fulfill that part, right? Because a lot of times, I'll be honest with you, some of those are not day-to-day administrators. Some of those might be doing more customer-facing. And that's the key goal about this certification. It focuses more on pre-sales, how to position F5 products. And as we go out throughout the day today in this training, you're going to see how we're going to talk about key areas that you should focus on and how to position this test, the things you're going to learn for the test. All right, let me go to the next slide. So this is just showing you the exam numbers here. Again, another thing I wanted to mention too, if you get a 202 certification, that does not actually automatically give you the 201. That's a separate cert. And then just keep that in mind. Now, as an engineer, you can hold multiple certifications. You can have a 201 and a 202. That's fine. The next level is called the 300 level, where we have exams that focuses on the LTM exam, like a 301A and B exam. Other certs that focuses on DNS, ASM, which is our web application firewall, APM. And then if you want to go up to the next level, that's the solutions expert. That's the 400 level. And we have a couple tracks for that too. We have a cloud certification and a security certification for the 400 level. Think of it kind of like the CCIE of the F5 world, right? So if you're coming from a Cisco world, this will probably be kind of like your CCNA, CCNP, CCIE equivalents, right? All right, so let's go to exam structure again. Very similar to what we spoke about yesterday on the 101 test. It's a 80 questions, 90 minutes, right? We'll talk about secret sauce later on, but key thing I always tell people: go through the exam as fast as you can. Mark the questions if you don't know the answer, just mark the best answer. Mark that question. Keep going to the end. Sometimes you'll find better questions towards the end of the test. I'd be honest with you, for me, when I took this test, since I have more experience with F5, this is not very different from what you saw yesterday on the 101. Nothing to do about commands or anything like that. It's more focused on how to position products and understanding what products to give to a customer. And we'll see that when we go through this study session. Again, this is some of the key goals of this exam, right? And as I mentioned, it's more geared towards sales professionals. We do have on our website, we do have a study guide out there, that we still have this link up there, but we put it on the Cloud Docs one. We are going to share this presentation. I also mentioned these links yesterday. We have the F5 Certified Professionals group in LinkedIn, right? And also, I wanted to mention one of the key things you should do is make sure you have access to partners at f5.com. There's a lot of content there. Like, for example, there's some presentations you can download or data sheets. But also one of the key things here is by getting access to this site, if you're a partner SC, we can get you access to learnf5.com. On that site, there's pretty good series of trainings called Getting Started series and the Sales Accreditation series that we usually tell partners to take. That's like another cert that you can do on your own online. And it gives you like an accreditation. Those are also used for our Unity program for the partners that are doing silver, gold, and so on, right? They need that as a requirement because they need a couple engineers that need to be certified on that. But again, all that content complements your study, tools that you need for this exam.
Yeah. Also note that Partner Central has changed recently. Changed back in August. So if you haven't been on recently, there is a whole new technical section. And you have to renew your credentials when you do that.
Yeah, no,
so
exactly.
For those of you who haven't been on, you're great. But for those even who have been on, you will have to renew your credentials before you go back in.
Okay. And Mickey, I was going to ask you, can you put, how that we have that link with the blueprint, that K article? Can you post that in the chat for everyone so they can see that too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do is this exam, content-wise, it is not as much content as what you will see on the 101 or the 201, but we're going to focus on key areas. The first section, and we're going to post a blueprint so you can look at that too. First section we're focusing on is on discovery, right? So you're going to see throughout this course, we're going to be, if you're looking at an opportunity with a customer, you're going to learn how to find information, how to identify key stakeholders, and then all the way till we get to the level where we've recommended a solution of them with F5 products, and how to create basic BOM entries, right? A bill of materials, right? So let's take a look at the first section. We're going to focus on discovery. So when we think about discovery, here is where we're trying to gather information about a customer, right? A lot of times we tend to forget, when we go to meet a customer, we don't do our diligence and research who they are, right? Let's say this is your first time. You're an F5 pre-sales engineer at your company, right? And you're going out and you're seeing a new customer. Key things we wouldn't look at, right? There's a lot of information in there. For example, looking at their website, gather information, who's their board of directors, any press releases. Maybe that company recently had a merger or acquisition, right? Maybe they might have an existing install base of F5 or they're new to F5. These are some of the key resources you want to look out there. Social media sites, right? Some of us are on LinkedIn, Facebook. We get that information. One that we brought up on this training that I was not aware about was this angel.co. This is pretty good. This has a lot of information on companies, but also looking at things on maybe LinkedIn or job postings. Sometimes they post these in some of these social media sites. You might see things there where they're trying to hire an F5 engineer, or they're looking for people to do an email migration to Exchange, or maybe they're implementing SAP or VMware. Any of those vendors, we touched that with our F5 products. Again, the key thing here is understanding how to research and gather information about that company. Right. And also from a social media part and discovery, we also have to determine, what's that customer's challenges, right? one of the key things, you might find out, maybe they're, like I mentioned earlier, there's an acquisition or maybe they're having problems or things that drive their businesses. Here's some examples, cloud challenges, complacency, right? Maybe they have to be compliant with PCI or HIPAA. So there's a couple products we could position on the F5 side to meet those requirements. And what we've done here, I have the links here for the class too. You'll be able to, dig down and look at that. On the exam, you'll probably get scenarios where you're trying to determine where the customer, they're put in a scenario and you're trying to determine what is the true challenge of that customer, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to accomplish, right? Section 103 also focuses on, looking at associate customer requirements at a high level with F5 products. Maybe there might be examples of this customer is rolling out a remote, user VPN set product, right? They're trying to come up with a solution to help them provide remote access to their users. Here is where the importance of understanding what our F5 products do is going to be very, very important for the exam. For example, understanding that, some of our products like local traffic managers used for load balancing or access policy managers used for VPNs. Key thing here is understanding that and how you can position that to the customers. What I've done here, and these are all live links when you get this presentation. F5 solutions on our f5.com site, we have lists of solutions based on industry, anything from industry to verticals to particular products. This is pretty good as a resource. Go in there, take a look at some of the examples. Maybe there's examples of the medical field, the financial field, where some of our products are positioned to help solve some of their challenges and problems, right? Also on our partner site, we do have use cases out there, data sheets that you can download and look at, examples or case studies of customers that have implemented F5 solutions. Leif or Mickey, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you kind of said it. I don't know if you've gotten to the discovery portion of the content, but absolutely, you want to position or fix a customer's pain point with F5 solutions. So that's really what we're talking about today. Yeah,
and one of the things one thing that I like, and we'll see later on with F5 is, we have some good battle cards that kind of tell you, in summary, it's like a one-page document that shows you our solution, what it does, and who you should be targeting. Traditionally, us as traditional network engineers, we kind of focus more on the network or security teams, but we tend to forget some of the other key stakeholders, and like the CTOs or even the chief security officers and other, even compliancy departments. There's departments that have products that fit into that.
Hey, one other thing I'll add quickly is that I think F5 does a great job with not saying, "Hey, buy our stuff; it's better."
Yeah.
We really want you to focus on, where your customers' gaps are in their particular solutions, and then introduce F5 alternatives to make them happy. So
I agree. And that's what the key thing, that we're such an open platform that we integrate with a lot of vendors. Everything from major software vendors from like Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, and even partnerships we have with hardware vendors, right? So, and some of these vendors that we work with, some of them might be competitors, right? They might have competing products, but we get along with them. We integrate, and again, depending on the customer requirements, as we see here, the key thing is understanding what's their challenge, right? Maybe our F5 products will fit in as part of the whole puzzle, right? And there's other vendors that could fit into that piece too. So got to keep that in mind. So as a pre-sales engineer, the key thing that I mentioned, previously we were discovering stuff. The key thing is educating ourselves, right? Educating ourselves how to position F5 products. This is kind of like a summary of, some of the things we need to know, right? We have a lot of products. When we started as F5, everybody just tells us, "Oh, you're just a load balancing company," right? And I always tell them, well, Cisco a couple of years ago was just a router company, right? That's all they sold was routers. Then they sold switches, firewalls, so many things. Same thing with F5. We started with load balancer. We have so many products that that help customers solve some of their problems, right? So here's an example where we not only have local traffic manager, which is our load balancer, but we also have products that do DNS load balancing or global load balancing. We have our ASM product, or advanced WAF, which is our web application firewall. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of these things, but we've listed some of these. The key thing to look at what they are, definitely going to the F5 main website and looking at the products, getting an overview of what they are. One of the key things I always tell everyone is the core architecture of our F5 products is that we're a full proxy, right? A full proxy means that the F5 stands in between the client and the backend server. So when traffic flows through the F5, this gives us the power to not only look into the traffic, manipulate it. Let's say if we want to compress HTTP traffic, or maybe we want to do things like SSL offloading or SSL encryption. The key thing, since we have that view, since we're the middleman in that transaction, we can go through all layers of the OSI model and see what's happening, right? We can do security, web application security firewall. So this is one of the key things. As a result of having this full proxy capability, this gives us the opportunity to make our product modular, right? One of the first things we did with F5 is back in version 9, previous versions of F5 were just, you had to buy an appliance just to do load balancing and another one to do DNS load balancing, right? When we went, and we used to use BSD as our operating system, right? BSD Unix. So when we moved to version 9, our product, we re-architected our platform, right? One of the key things we did, we came out with this Traffic Management OS, right? It's our own operating system. It runs on top of a special Linux version we have on our F5 appliances. And it doesn't matter if you're running this either as a hardware appliance or virtual edition, or even running a virtual edition in the cloud. They all have the key core operating system, TMOS, right? As a result of this TMOS operating system, we had the ability to actually make modular components of our products, right? So if you have an F5 device and by default, it has all the products on the device, but the license key is what unlocks those features, right? So if you see here, when you unlock those features, you can have, modules that run local traffic manager for load balancing, access policy manager. Some of these modules are enabled, and we don't have to even change the fundamental operating system. It just appear as a panel, right, on the GUI as a module that you can run. So
I also wanted to mention quickly that F5 has deprecated Application Acceleration Manager.
Yes.
Just wanted to mention that real quick.
Yeah, and I think the exam hasn't changed since we last did it, right? So it's still on the same version.
Yeah, 13. I don't think there'd be a
If it's
question.
13, then there is no AAM.
Okay, there's no AM. Yep. Yeah, just so you guys know, AM was our application accelerator. This was kind of like, some of the key things are still around on our new versions of F5, but what it mostly was, think of it like a WAN accelerator, kind of like
Riverbed.
Riverbed. Yes, Riverbed, or sorry,
Blue
what's
Coat.
the other ones? Blue Coats, or there's another one, Silver Peaks.
Yeah.
Right?
It was designed for both WAN and web acceleration, so it
Yeah.
combined two of our earlier products.
Fortunately for us,
Much of what's still in there is under the the accelerator tab when you open an LTM. So things like bandwidth control, QoS. So you should not see that come up in the exam at all.
Exactly. All right, so
you may be asked about acceleration features, or about a customer wanting to accelerate things.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we could do caching acceleration, but when it was used for WAN optimization, bandwidth has gotten so cheap these days. We're beyond the T3s and T1s of the days, right? So let's look at our core product. Our core product, and the reason we're bringing these up is so you guys can understand, what they do, right? So our core product is called, at F5 we like to use acronyms, so we try to get away from that, but it's still got to understand what the acronyms mean, right? So LTM, or what is really called is local traffic managers. When I say LTM, think local load balancing, right? Basically, this product helps, the customers deliver, quicker applications, right? The F5 can actually use this to do load balancing, optimize traffic. We could do things like compress traffic. We could do SSL offloading. We could do health monitoring. Okay, key component. This is what everybody tends to know us for, right? Pretty much when you position a product like an F5 product for your customers, you tend to lead with this, right, as your base product. And on top of this, you could put on modules. But depending on our products, some products we have can actually run standalone, right, where you can have something that just runs DNS or something that just runs web application firewall. But this is the core product that that you should become familiar with, our local traffic manager and some of the features it can do. The next
Yeah,
product, go ahead, Leif.
sorry, I was just going to say you may get questions because there are definitely optimization functions on here, like Orlando said. There are caching capabilities and compression capabilities, and you might get asked about compression capabilities, whether they go through hardware or software, because we can do both that way. Same thing with SSL capabilities, right? Some things we can do through hardware, some things we can do through software as they increase. But you may also ask about ways that we can secure things, right?
Yeah.
Or you probably also will be asked about ways. Another optimization is through TCP, right? Because we're a full proxy architecture, we can make TCP work differently on one side of the proxy as opposed to the other side of the proxy, right? We can tune for mobile applications. We can tune for WAN applications. We secure application. There is built-in DDoS, several types of DDoS protection, such as SYNFLOOD and stuff into this thing. And it's also, by default, an ISCA certified firewall.
Exactly.
Although it doesn't have firewall rule sets. So those are things that may come up in the exam. Those are things that they may point you toward.
Yeah, those are good things. Leif mentioned there's some keywords that you might see as you read some of these scenarios, and you're trying to position what's the best product for that customer. The next product that, one of the core products we've always had after LTM was we call it Big IP DNS. It used to be called Global Traffic Manager. So think globally load balancing across data centers, having this F5 product do load balancing. And you'll see an example in the next slide. But the key thing, it's actually based on DNS. So we kind of call it the F5 Big IP DNS. It could do DNS, intelligent DNS, where our DNS is so fast that if you have to do multiple queries, we could do that. We could also accelerate DNS using DNS Express. And so on the security side, we talked about DDoS protection on the LTM. We can also do that on our DNS products. You'd be surprised. People get their DNS attacked. A couple of years ago, we had a Mirai attack that hit dynamicdns.org. It was just like a 600 gigabit attack, brought down the whole site. So we have functions in our F5 DNS product to protect against DOS attacks. But DNS security is another one that you should probably remember this, DNSSEC. When you think about cache poisoning or changing your DNS, this is where DNS security plays a role, that protecting your services, right? Making sure that that DNS entry you have is secure and is authentic, right? It's not something that's been compromised. And you'll be surprised, some of our products, this can do, depending on the hardware platform, you can do over 100 million queries per second. That's something that, keep that in mind.
Well,
but go ahead.
On the accelerated DNS, two things you might look out for if they're asking for solutions. One, intelligent DNS is basically DNS load balancing, right? I receive a request to resolve a name, and I will resolve the name. Oh, to the best site. He's going to go through that. The accelerated DNS, I don't know if we have anything on here for that. But the accelerated DNS, what we are is a secondary server. So there's a couple of ways that they use it. We can use it to protect the primary DNS. We can sit in front of it as a secondary DNS, pull up their zones and answer those. When Orlando says we do 100,000 queries per second, that is 100,000 queries per vCPU, per hyperthread. So even on our smallest appliance, where we have what, 4 vPCUs, that's 400,000 queries per second.
Exactly.
So those are kind of the numbers that you can look at when you're thinking about things. Or if they want to protect their primary DNS, in addition to doing DNS load balancing. Oh, well, this would be the product that you'd sell them.
Yeah, and this is going to show. I'm going to show you an example here of like the global load balancing feature of it, and that's what a lot of people know us for with this product. But we can do so many things. So here's an example. I'm a user, right? I'm going to type in my my web browser www.f5.com. It's going to go out to my database, my DNS database, either point to my local DNS or go out to the internet. So the root server is going to come back and say, who owns the f5.com, www.f5.com. Based on the DNS entry, it's going to send us to our F5 devices, and it's going to point us to the data center. If we're doing like global availability, it's going to send us to the first data center, right? So in this example, it's going to respond back with the IP address for that website at this data center, right, to that user. So it's going to be directed to that location. But let's, here's a query. But let's say if something happens, that data center went down, or that web server went down, the next user comes on and tries to connect. What the F5 Global Traffic Manager or DNS is going to do is it's going to talk to the GTM products either here, or you can have one at each data center if you want. They kind of communicate with each other. He's going to see that his website's down, so he's going to direct the user to go to the next available data center, right? So here's an example where it's returning back this address. Now, one key thing to remember also, I'm not sure if it's in an exam, this product, not only can we do availability between data centers, right? But we can also do geographic locations. Or if you hear things these days of GPRS, where countries are requiring data to stay in their countries, right? Not to go out and store their server data at other data centers in other countries. You can even use this product to direct users. Maybe they're coming from the UK, direct them to like the nearest data center in Europe. Maybe that data center is in Germany, for example, or in the US, maintain that. So you can actually do this product, use this product to do also that type of load balancing, right? Geographic load balancing or topology.
And we should note that all big IP solutions have, all TMOS solutions have a geolocation database built in, a commercial grade geolocation database.
Yeah, and they're pretty good. I mean, those geolocation databases, even like you mentioned, the local traffic manager can use that. You can get down, the United States, it can get down close to the neighborhood of where that traffic's coming from. Other countries can get down to cities or provinces. It's pretty cool. And we've seen like on certain logs, you can see where traffic's coming from, right? So that's pretty much the F5 DNS product. Again, go to the website, read about it. There's also good videos on YouTube. A lot of our guys from Dev Central, if you go to youtube.com, there's devcentral.com. Sometimes they post whiteboard sessions that explains how these technologies work. If you need that as a refresher, I'm a person, I tend to use YouTube these days because I don't have time to read like a thick manual, right? So it's another good resource you can use for this. Another product we wanted to mention that a lot of people don't tend to see us doing this, right? We have a product, our F5, Leif mentioned earlier, we are certified through ICSA Labs as a firewall, right? So by default, F5s have always been a default deny box, right? If you have a virtual IP that you put on the F5 and you open up a port, for example, 80, that's the only thing that's going to be open. Nothing else will be exposed, right? By default, nothing, unless you open a listener and a port, then you can connect to that traffic. What we've done is we had customers over the couple of years where they were under attacks, for example, like DDoS attacks. And then they noticed that their firewalls were being, they were taken down, right? They were just being taken down because couldn't handle so much traffic. But they noticed that they had some of their F5s in parallel and they were just up and running, right? Nothing happened. Leif mentioned earlier that by default, our F5 have DOS features being in place, right? So if it notices so many connections coming in, we can see if those connections are just waiting for so long, we could just reset them, right? So like that doesn't take up our connection table. We took that concept and we had customers that started using our products like a firewall. And then what we've done, we've created a new product called Advanced Firewall Manager. And the key thing to understand here, it's a stateful firewall, right? Layer 4 through layer 7, right? It could do natting, it could do SSL, it could protect you against DOS attacks. It might not be like your Palo Alto or your Cisco Firepowers where it has deep logging, but every year we come out with, we keep updating this product, keeps getting more features, right? It's evolving. But we have customers that are internet service providers, even yourself. You might have your cell phone might be behind an F5 AFM because it uses carrier grade natting to handle IPv6. So key thing here to understand is, one of the main purposes being using as a stateful firewall and also as a DOS protection. Leif, you wanted to mention something?
Well, yeah, it is a full proxy firewall. It's not new. We've had it for 4 years now. When you're doing the test and you're looking for things, we tend to refer this as an enterprise firewall or a data center firewall.
Correct.
In other words, the concept being that a Palo Alto or a next gen firewall, their primary purposes are to watch internal users going outbound, right? They're not really designed for bunches and bunches of connections, at least not cheaply designed for that. right, going in and out, so that we become a more economical firewall when you're talking about the fact that we can create hundreds of thousands to millions of connections per second, which is, where we can maintain, I think, almost 1 billion on our biggest boxes connections simultaneously, right? You just can't do these with next gen firewalls. You can't
Exactly.
scale like that. And we happen to be less expensive. So the concept is that we are an inbound firewall, right? We're old school firewall. We're not next gen, but we're inbound. So for for inbound rules, right? When you have people coming to your web servers, you don't care about a lot of different things that you care about when your users are going outbound. And then that we can offload that away from the next gen firewalls to let them do what they're supposed to do. So if you see any questions around like that, this customer has a significant amount of inbound connections. They're trying to upgrade they're trying to expand their Palo Altos or their next gen firewalls, and they're running into budgetary concerns. This would be something that you could come and say, hey, what we'll do is we'll take this inbound load, we'll handle it over here, and we'll let these do what they're supposed to do. So that's the kind of thing they're trying to look at when they get to this.
Yeah. And again, this is a stateful layer 4, firewall, right?
It's a proxy firewall. I don't even know if I would use the term. Stateful is not really the right term. It's a full proxy firewall.
Yeah,
Stateful firewall is watching and cutting state, but it's still allowing everything to go through. We actually still terminate the connection.
Exactly. Yeah, layer 4 stateful full proxy firewall. Now, the other one, just for people that are not familiar with our other product, we also have a product called Application Security Manager. That's our web application firewall. Because and I wish web application firewall had a different naming convention because people get confused with regular firewall and a web application firewall. The key thing about our Application Security Manager product, it focuses on providing a web application firewall, and this one focuses more on defending against threats like OWASP Top 10. What OWASP is basically the Open Web Application Security Project. Their organization, if you go to OWASP.org, they list 10 of the top 10 like vulnerabilities that are for websites. There's things like SQL injections and cross-site scripts. Different types of attacks are geared more towards the web servers that are behind, right? So even if you have a firewall, you still need a web application firewall to protect against those attacks. Especially with bots and some of the things you're seeing today. Key things to remember here: OWASP Top 10, bot mitigation is the key thing with this product, right? We could do things where we can do data guard, where we can protect your data. Like instead of showing like social security numbers on your web browser, we can mask that out. Credit card numbers, right? And then we also can do, we can scale up, sorry, when the slide too far. We can scale up this product. You can run this either as a virtual edition hardware, or you can run it also in the cloud providers, right? As a virtual edition. Just understanding these, we do have some overviews of this on our partner site and also on the product site. And again, you've noticed everything has like manager on it. So make sure you don't confuse yourself, right? Local traffic manager, global traffic manager is now DNS, right? And now this one, application security manager. But we also have another product that's called access policy manager, APM, right? APM is it's known as our SSL VPN and federation and identity tool, right? This is more focused on using the F5 to give you not only SSL VPN access, right, to your site. We can actually do that with this product, kind of like some of the other vendors do with their firewall. But we also have the capability to do, since we're a full proxy, we can actually do things where we can actually create a portal, right, where the users can log in with their credentials. They can log in against Active Directory, authentication, or single sign-on. And then you get a portal view, and then you can click on links to websites that are behind your F5 or your firewall. We can launch them in the portal. We can give you access to things like VDI environments, like if you're running Citrix VDI or VMware VDI or remote desktop services from Microsoft. We can actually be that front page so you can get to your applications, launch those virtual environments, right, or launch your web pages. And then we take it to the next level. If you hear things like SAML, these days people are logging into O365. We can actually use this F5 product to do single sign-on to Office 365. We could do federation with SAML and give you access to those sites, even other sites like Google, and some of the other ones like Salesforce, we can actually do that with this product. So it's kind of like a Swiss Army knife product in the sense it can do all these things, VPN and so on. So again, key things to remember here: SSL VPN, single sign-on, SAML, identity federation, all these tied to this product. Another product that we seldom don't talk about, but we also use this as an add-on feature with some of our other components. We have this product called Secure Web Gateway. Think of this kind of like your Blue Coat devices that can do things like content filtering, classification. This product, you can actually couple this with some of the other F5 products. Here's an example where users are VPNing in using the Access Policy Manager product, and they're using this Secure Web Gateway product to look at their content. To let's say there's a category where you don't want people to go to a certain website. We could do that with this product. Also, we can do things where, let's say we're doing SSL decryption, and you don't want to decrypt somebody's traffic that's going to a financial website or a hospital, a healthcare site. We can create categories using this particular product, the engine from this product. This is kind of uses like a WebSense engine to classify that traffic. Just understand the key thing, content filtering, anything that does protection against malware and target attacks. Think about this product, the Secure Gateway product. And then another add-on feature that Leif mentioned earlier, we have this other product called IP Intelligence. We kind of talked about this with the geolocation database. This is an add-on SKU, right? It's not a standalone product. So just going back to the other one, if you notice, these both are SKUs. So these are optional SKUs you can add on to your F5s to enable these features. IP Intelligence, it's mostly used for reputation, right? Allows us to block, if we see users coming from a malicious IP address from the internet, this database can look that up, with the F5 LTM or the firewall, the web application firewall, AFM also, and say, okay, this user is coming from a bad address, just like reset that connection. Or maybe your users are going out to the internet and they're going through the F5 and they notice that it's going out to a bad site that has malware or something like that. This reputation database can help block those type of IPs, right? And that kind of malicious activity. All right. And any questions on that?
So I just wanted to just jump in quickly, and we're calling out good, better, best. If we haven't talked about it, it's just a F5ZZ button when it comes to licensing. We can bundle in lots of products. For example, the good licensing model will give you local traffic manager, and I think it's DNS. Mm-hmm. And then better gives you advanced firewall manager. I may be getting that backwards. Hang on. And then there's best gives you all the products. So. Yeah. And it's changing too as we speak. We're getting some updates to good, better, best, but it's a bundle of licensing rather than buying individual point products. And I'll upload something into the chat to make it a little more clear.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Especially since we're talking about all these modules, everything you see here at F5, you can buy a la carte, right? You can buy just an LTM box, right? Or virtual edition. You can buy them singular. The SKU ones are the add-ons. Those are not included with the good, better, best bundles, but sometimes, depending, and you'll see example, we're going to talk a little bit about licensing later on. There might be scenarios where a customer, he wants to do load balancing and WAF. Maybe the good bundle is not the best for him. Maybe you should go to the best because it includes that as a module. So just understanding what, what Mickey's putting in with that link, which product, for the customer, what's the best benefit for them, either to go with a good, better, best bundle or do things a la carte. And also depends on the environment, right? If you're going to do a hardware recommendation of a product or a virtual edition.
Yep, thanks.
Okay? Yep. No, that was a good question. Okay, another one that we want to talk about, another product that we sell as an add-on SKU. And this is we still have this, but in this particular exam, we mentioned this, used to be its own product, but now we have this advanced WAF feature that we add some of those components into our advanced WAF product. But what WebSafe, or what we call DataSafe, is basically a product add-on SKU that you use with the F5 to protect your credentials, right? To protect you from fraud. So a lot of people don't know, some of the keywords. Remember some of these keywords, what they are: bank fraud protection, retail user credential protection. What it is basically, a lot of people don't know, when you have a web browser and you go to a login page, your username and password that you see on the login page, when you type that in, that even though you see an SSL key, that's actually stored in your web browser. So if you have malware in on your computer, they can actually go into your web browser cache, right? And just grab that information. That's just clear text information. What we can do with the F5 Web Safe product, we can actually take those fields, identify what's a username and password, and you can actually, as the user's typing in his credentials, you're going to see like kind of like scrambled or garbage appear on the browser, like if you were going to go into Chrome and inspect that field. So if the hacker grabs that information, all he's going to see is garbage, right? He's not going to see the true credentials. Again, the power of F5's full proxy is that since we sit in between the client and the backend servers, we can actually make those changes on the fly. We can also manipulate fields so that, you know, the hackers, if they try to grab the actual form for the username field and the password field, we can change that on the fly so, you know, it protects the user. Other things we could do here is also, not only can it do protection against credentials, we can also do protection against phishing attacks. Key things to remember when you identify this product. Then another key product we wanted to mention is SSL Orchestrator. We mentioned earlier that F5 could do SSL offloading, right? We could do things where if you're load balancing a website, instead of you putting SSL on each box, right, the search on every individual backend server, you can have the F5 do that SSL load balancing, like offload that from the client to the F5 could be SSL encrypted, and then the backend could be unencrypted, or we can just offload that traffic, right? So it doesn't put a lot of CPU performance on your backend web servers. We can take that as another step further. Being that the fact that F5 is good at doing SSL decryption encryption, we also have the capability of turning it, if you turn it around, where if traffic's going out to the internet, we can take an F5 device with an SSL orchestrator license, right? We can decrypt traffic, and then we could send it unencrypted to your firewalls, to your security devices like your IPSs, data loss prevention servers, DLP servers and all that. We can offload that, send them decrypted traffic, let them do their inspection, then on the return trip, we can re-encrypt that traffic and send it back out. If you were trying to do this on your security devices, you're looking at about an 80% hit, right, on the performance of your devices. A key thing here is that we can actually use the capabilities of the F5 to do this, make it easier, and it also helps you to eliminate blind spots on your network, right? Sometimes your security devices can't even see that traffic because it's encrypted, right? So a key thing here is, you know, SSL visibility, right, is what's key about this product, and increase the performance of your network, right, when it comes to decryption and encryption of SSL traffic. Then another product we're going to talk about too that is in this exam too is on the security platform side is DDoS Hybrid Defender. And I guess we still have this on this test, right? So this is kind of, some of these features are also on the Advanced Firewall Manager product. But what it does is basically our F5 devices can do DDoS protection, right? If you're under a DOS attack, if it's volumetric or even SSL-based DOS attacks, we can actually take an F5 device, you know, apply this license. We can put it out in the perimeter if you want to do that, and we can actually protect you from DOS attacks coming into your network, protect your firewalls, you know, just before they hit the perimeter. We can integrate this also with our service. We have a service called Silverline, which is our cloud-based DOS protection. You probably heard of, you know, like Akamai and some of the other people out there that do DDoS protection at the perimeter. So if you're under attack, a DDoS attack, you know, just trying to fill up your internet pipe, volumetric attack, we can use this product, DDoS Hybrid Defender, to protect your your site, your main site. But if, let's say, so much bandwidth is coming in, the attack is getting greater, this actually can signal our Silverline service to actually start mitigating that traffic further out in the cloud, right, before it gets to your site. So do an overview of this. We still sell this as a standalone product, right? But you can buy this either as a hardware appliance or a virtual edition too.
Yeah, it's basically our on-premise DDoS device, and it basically takes all the DDoS capabilities you have from layer 3 through layer 7 and applies them in one spot. In other words, you can not only protect, you know, your networks from DDoS, on-prem DDoS attacks, but you can also protect web applications behind from layer 7, slow and low DDoS attacks, which a lot of on-premise devices would not do. So, and it usually sits, and if they're asking you, I mean, if they're talking about how this works, the reason it's usually a standalone device is because it usually sits out in front of the firewall, or should sit out in front of the firewall, right? Because you want to protect the firewall from DOS attack just as much as you want to protect anything else behind it from DOS attacks.
Yeah, no, that's true. I also saw a question pop up from Matt.
I just answered it. So
Okay. You want to? I could.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Matt had asked. There's a company called Shape Security. We recently acquired them. He was asking how we will position WebSafe with Shape. And again, in this exam, there's no. We acquired Nginx and Shape. That's not going to be on this exam, but it might be in the future exams when they revise it. But yeah, like I said, some we have products that some of them do overlap in certain function, right? But again, like with this WebSafe versus Shape, WebSafe is more about the actual credentials, protection of the login, the username, password. But Shape also focuses on protecting if that user's username was stolen and it's out on the dark web. Before we used to use a different database engine for WebSafe, but now we're going to be using Shape for that too. So this will be a good opportunity. If you want to read about this, we can send you information how we can integrate both. Some things complement each other, and some things that they might have similarities, but they're quite different. So, good question, Matt. Another key portfolio product on the F5 side, we have all these devices, LTM and all that. You got to have some kind of centralized management for them, right? So our product is called BigIQ Centralized Manager, right? Think of this, if you're coming from the Cisco world, this is kind of like your Cisco Prime. If you're a Palo Alto world, it's like Panorama. It's basically your central management solution, right, at F5. What can we do with this product? I mean, we could do things where we can back up F5 configs, right? We could back up the configurations on devices. We could push out SSL surge. We can also create templates, right, where you can create application delivery templates where, let's say you're going to create a template that you're going to have your DevOps teams use to build a website, build a load balancing policy. Instead of them going into the F5, you can actually create a template and give them access to a certain portion where they can fill in that information in a form, and it deploys the configuration. So we can do configuration management with this, backups, even compliance. There's stuff with compliance too, where if you have to run a PCI compliance report or certain HIPAA reporting or tools that you need to gather that information, you can also use the BigIQ for that too. Now, this is consumed either as a hardware appliance or a virtual appliance that you can run on your hypervisor. So another good product. You might get questions on this about central management and all this, so keep in mind what it does for BigIQ. And then another key thing I wanted to put out there that, these are, again, there's a lot of resource links there. They're all good, and you can just use them to go back and reference to this. We do have reference architectures out there on F5 that we publish, right? For example, for intelligent DNS or SSL references, right? Definitely take a look at some of that, and this will help you as you study to understand key components of this, right? How you can position these products. All right, next part of section 2, gathering resources, kind of like what we were talking about earlier in discovery, technical demonstrations. One of the things that as a pre-sales engineer you're going to do is you can run this. You want to run. Sometimes we have purpose-built demos that you can run labs and demo some of our products to our customers. As partner SCs, we have access to what's called VLabs, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But again, if you're going to build a demo or propose something to our customer, we have resources on our main website, right? And also, as I mentioned, we have another site called devcentral.fi.com. This is an independent community, right? You can create an account here. This is a really good resource where you can find things where understand that people could put out their questions in the forums. They have a question like, this is not working, how can we do this? Or how can we propose a solution? A lot of people put answers out there, but you also find things where it's resources out there where they have example iRoles or IAP templates, examples, or posting. Sometimes they'll post videos on there, how to do certain things with F5s. So very good resource. Just keep that in mind. One of the resources, you might get questions on that. Our other common websites like support.f5.com, GitHub is another one. And then VLab is the one I mentioned that we do the VLab stuff. For example, if we go to GitHub, if you go to github.com/F5networks, we have links up there to examples how to deploy F5 with AWS, Azure. We also have links there that say if you're using automation tools like Ansible or HashiCorp Terraform, We have links and examples of codes of how to deploy F5 with those products. And also you'll find sometimes up there, they'll post videos and how-to guides, how to deploy these things. So another.
And we should also mention clouddocs.f5.com, which was available, I think.
Yeah, the CloudDocs site that we're using, which at that time we didn't put it in here, right? We didn't have that as a resource. So, but yeah, we could put that link there. The support site, support.f5.com used to be called askf5.com. You can still use that. Virtual labs or virtual VLabs. What is a VLab? Basically, what we've done with our F5 partners is, if you're registered as a partner SC, what we do is when you create an account on partnercentral.com to access the partner site, we give you access to download to f5downloads.com, and you can actually download under the downloads.f5.com site. You can actually download these VLabs, and what they are is basically there's some zip files that contain PDFs, how to build with instructions, how to build an F5 environment for your own lab and demo purposes, how to build it on a workstation, like your computer running a VMware workstation or a Mac using Fusion. You can also build these on ESX servers. And within those instructions, what's pretty cool is they have folders with PDF guides that show you step-by-step how to demo. Like, for example, if you're demoing a web application firewall or access policy manager, it has like a little lab. You go through it. You can save that config and you save it as a demo. So if you're going to demo to a customer, you can restore that config and use the steps. It has like pretty much like a playbook that you can go through a script and do an actual demo. And a key thing here is understanding where to find this. Remember, you can get this at downloads.f5.com. If you see that in the exam, where to find these resources, right, and how to use them. Section 203, articulate key values of F5 solutions. I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier about this. You have on the partner site these sales plays. Hopefully, I'm not sure if this link still works. I don't really know, because we recently updated our website. They might work. You might want to check that one, Mickey, see if this still works.
It will take them to the technical hub.
Good. Awesome.
I already checked them. Then they'll have to kind of grope around from there. But there's a lot of good stuff, including some sizing guides and stuff out there that would be high-level sizing guides that would be well worth looking at. And copies of other certification stuff we're doing and other guides.
Yeah, and let me show you what's an example of a sales play. And, again, once you get access to this stuff, just download it, go through them. We're not telling you to memorize everything on these guides, but they're really good at giving you an overview of what they are. So here's an example. I'll bring one up on the screen here. So let's say SSL. Let's see here. I'll bring one up here. Let's grab one that's quickly. AWAF. Okay, playbook. So here's an example. I'm going to bring it on my screen here of a playbook, right? This is a self-contained PDF. Some of them are PowerPoints, right? What's cool about these things is that if I go view full screen, right, into full screen mode, these are interactive playbooks where you can click on them, and it can give you an overview of what the F5 product is, market opportunity, why sell this, why customers, who should we target, right? Business drivers, use cases. These are all pretty good because they're quick summary as you're trying to learn these products and how to position them. Qualifying questions, key stakeholders. We're going to talk a little bit about stakeholders later on. Who's our competition and all that. So I definitely would recommend you, as part of this exam, download these, look at them, and use good resources for this. We also have some that are like one-page ones. Sales accreditation. This is what I would recommend before you go out and take this F5 pre-sales certification exam. This could be kind of like a good tool where you can go out to this. If you haven't done this already, or just go through it again, on our partner site on learnf5.com, we have, it's a pretty much computer-based training, that goes through an overview of who's F5, what our products are, what the Unity program does, and all that.
You absolutely should finish and pass this before you take the 202.
Exactly. This gives you like a little mini certification when you do that. Yeah.
And it isn't just straight, I'm going to watch a 30-minute video on a bunch of topics. There are short vignettes, 5 or 6 minutes, but there's also a lot of links to a lot of good material that then you can, if you're doing pre-sales, you can keep it and go after it anyway. Orlando, did you want me to show them the technical hub that they?
Yes, yeah. You have it up. That'd be great. Here, I'll stop sharing. That's perfect. Yeah, good to do that.
Let me flip over real.
Yeah, because the next slide that I have is basically that, going to the partner's site. So yeah, that'd be awesome.
As soon as I can.
And Nikki, how are we doing with the questions?
Take it easy.
Good. I'm keeping up. I'm just answering the questions, and I'm putting both Leif and I are putting important links in the chat so everyone has them.
All right.
So this is the new Partner Central site, and this is what you would see. So I'm coming in as a technical partner, right? You're going to get technical updates, newsletters. There's a bunch of really good stuff in here. An easy link to F5 Learn is here. I thought I saw it up there. Yeah, Learn F5 Access instructions. So that's where you're going to find a lot of videos and stuff and a lot of training there. Right. So just a lot of good stuff. Here's an easy link to the sales accreditation role. So you can figure those things out. So there's just a lot of good stuff there. Then if you go down, then there's technical certification, technical demos, technical guides, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is something that you guys will want to get assigned to. And like I said, I put a link in there, accounts.f5.com/partnercentral. It's probably the easiest way to go about either reactivating your account, because all accounts have to be reactivating, or creating a new account. And if you run into some issues, then let us know, because there are a couple things in Salesforce we have to tweak to get you access to this. So everybody will not automatically get it the first time. We'll have to send an email to partners.f5.com to have them do their thing. Okay.
Cool. No, that's
it. I just figured as long as we were talking about it, they might as well see it.
Yeah, no, that was excellent. Excellent lead in for that. All right. So.
And we've been running close to an hour. So
yeah.
you may
I'm going to see if, let me see. I think this section, I want to finish up the section is almost done, and then we'll take a break. Yeah. Hopefully this will take me like 10 more minutes and we'll take a break.
Sounds perfect.
All right. So this section of section 204, one of the things to think about also, and as you're positioning the F5 products, right? Understanding the architectural considerations, right? You're going to see, especially today, traditional customers before used to have all their servers and your data centers in-house, right? Over the years, that's changed. Some of them have kept their stuff in-house. Some of them have put them in co-location sites. And then some of them have also migrated their services to the cloud. Or maybe they're running a hybrid environment too, right? With both solutions. Things to understand, that if the customer's looking at a cloud strategy, this is where you want to position like our F5 Virtual Edition products, right? We also have some information on that on our link for Solutions Cloud. So, especially when you go to the cloud, one thing we always mention, key thing to remember, consistency. What's good about F5? Doesn't matter if you're running an F5 Virtual Edition at your data center or you're running the same product in AWS or Azure. The beauty of it, it's the same GUI, same interface. If you look at some of the providers like AWS or Azure, they have some load balancing solutions or some products that do some of the functions of the F5. But think of this: if you're moving your customers on AWS, he's using their services. Now they come back and say, "Hey, we got to move over to Azure or Google Cloud." They pretty much have to rebuild their whole environment to move to the other environment, right? To the other platform. With F5, when you go to the cloud center, do virtual edition, consistency, we can stand up the same environment on both cloud providers and move things over. And just keep that in mind. Also understand the security challenges the customer is facing, right? Like we mentioned earlier, we have our web application firewalls or our product that does SSL decryption, SSLO, or remote VPN access. Understanding, how we can position those. These are good links that show you how you can position our core products with these cloud providers and how you can secure the cloud. A lot of people don't understand when you go to the cloud, it's not like you're automatically being protected. It's just they're responsible for giving you a data center and a server to put your stuff on. They're not responsible for securing your customers' applications, right? Keep that in mind. I'll kind of mention what I just spoke about: consistent application services, making sure key thing. Remember that keyword: consistent application services as you move to the cloud while using F5 products. This is what I was trying to tell you about the shared security model, right? Here's an example. It doesn't matter if it's AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. They all provide you with, when it comes to security, access, protecting your hardware, the actual data center facility, right? But you're responsible for your data, maintaining your operating systems and all that. So key thing to remember that. Determine management orchestration. We talked a little bit about this. You might get questions on which products is position. Keywords here, big IQ. When it comes to orchestration, DevOps terms, REST API. Remember that the REST API is something that we use. It's a standard, open standard API that we can use the F5. So what it does, basically, developers have a lot of tools out there. You might hear of things like Postman or Ansible or HashiCorp. One thing that's pretty cool about our F5s, we're open, that we can use third-party tools or our Big IQ product, and you can use it to build configurations on the F5, automate those configurations. Doesn't matter if it's a hardware appliance or virtual dishes, we can do these configurations and schedule them and add, maybe servers to a load balancing pool, or stand up virtual servers, or stand up a web application firewall policy in our F5. We could do that. Just key thing here, Super NetOps, you might see that, or just understand REST API and third-party integration. So any questions? This is going to take us to the end of chapter, that section 2. It's a good time to take a break.
I've got the bottom of the hour right now, so I would go ahead and get us going again. Yep.
All right. And you got the recording going?
Correct.
Okay. All right, everyone, we're going to start back up. Okay, so we're now at section 3 of the blueprint, right, for the exam. Again, just to reiterate, section 1 we covered discovery, right? How to discover the customers, challenges, what they're trying to do, things they're trying to address. And we saw in the section 2 how we focus on education, right? Learning about the F5 products, what they do, how to position them. This is now where we're going to go into proposing a solution, right? Proposing a solution for a customer. And okay, and here are some of the things you're going to hear, again, kind of like the products, what we talked about, right? Which here, like section 301, we're going to kind of focus more on determining, which application services are needed, right? Which of our products are needed to meet that customer's requirements. So let's take a look again at local traffic management, right? Key things to understand here, and we mentioned this is a key product for load balancing, right? Not only load balancing, but we could do SSL offloading. We could do make applications faster, right? By doing things like compression, TCP optimization, looking at the health status of your applications. Key thing about the F5 LTM is we can actually look at the health status. If we know that a website is down and they're load balancing, we won't send traffic to that other server. We'll start redistributing the load between the other servers. Also gives the ability to grow, to expand. Let's say if you're going to add more web servers to load balance, you can add them into a load balancing pool and expand the traffic, right? And grow. You do have links here on on our website where you can use as references.
Yeah, the data sheets are great along the lines of speeds and feeds. They're usually 5 to 7 pages long. Highly recommend that if you're looking for a little more technical details on these products, to check out the data sheets.
Exactly. Again, we talked a little bit earlier about the global load balancer, or F5 DNS, GSLB, global services load balancing, or global load balancer is what we used to call it, GTM. So again, key things to remember, again, we mentioned earlier, high-speed DNS, load balancing, global load balancing of DNS between data centers. Doesn't matter, if you're looking at determining a service for a customer, we might get scenarios where the customer, needs to load balance traffic between data center, or GPRS, keep traffic close to the nearest country based on their resources because of laws. This is where you want to look at positioning the DNS product, right? And then the key things to also remember, as we mentioned earlier, DNS security, right? DNS security, protection against DOS attacks for your DNS. Some keywords, DNS flooding and all that. And again, this data sheet, download them, like Mickey said, look at them. They'll give you an overview, key areas, use cases for this. Yeah, yep. Like you just took the words right out of my mouth. Is those data sheets have great use cases? Again, in fact, we had a question in the Q&A
whether you needed hands-on to pass the 202. The answer is no. Our fearless leader, Ed Robigo, who's joining us, is fond of saying in this particular exam, you need to know the why instead of the how. The how comes tomorrow with Leif.
Yes, exactly. Okay, going back to, firewall positioning, right? When you hear key terms, firewalls, web application firewalls, understanding which is which, right? So unlike traditional firewalls, again, F5, as we mentioned earlier, it could be used, it has all the capabilities built in to be a layer 4 stateful firewall, full proxy stateful firewall. Key things to understand, see here, built on the full proxy architecture, understanding that, growth, data, so here, things about data center firewall, understand that this is where you want to position this product. Again, again, we have all these links at the bottom for the data sheet so you can download this. Understanding web application firewalls, when to position those services for applications. If you look back at all the products we've mentioned so far, local traffic manager, DNS load balancing, advanced firewall manager, even the web application firewall, the key goal is to making sure that your customers' applications are up and running. It doesn't matter if it's going through there's a disaster recovery or the customer's experiencing a high growth, right? All these products complement, those factors of protecting your apps, making them faster, right? We used to say at F5, we make apps go. That was kind of like that marketing. We were like, what? But the go thing was making apps go faster, secure, right, and available, right? So here, this particular product here, for example, the web application firewall, when you look at ASM, think about things like OWASP Top 10, PCI compliance, HIPAA compliance, right? These are key things you should get out of this when you want to position this for a customer.
Yeah. Also, you might want to remind them that there is bot protection built in for this. There was layer 7 DDoS. So when you're looking at application level DDoS attacks, like a slow LoRa's attack, that is not volumetric. That is not designed to overwhelm a firewall or anything else. That is a very low and slow attack where basically they're sending a GET request about 1 or 2 bytes at a time, as slow as they can get it. And then they're aiming for port exhaustion on those, right? So we can protect it. Those are the kinds of things we can protect about that. And also when you're looking at application protection, an easy way to think of things between web application firewall and fraud prevention is that when you're thinking WebSafe is designed to protect the customer's browser as they're logging into the application, right? Whereas a web application firewall is protecting the application from outside attacks that are coming in.
Yes. Yeah. And a key thing I wanted to add to this, with all these products, remember, you can run this on premise in the cloud as virtual editions, or you can consume this different ways. Since we wrote this exam, the content of this exam, we have new products that are going to be probably incorporated into this later on, the pre-sales and certification in the future. But, one thing that we have at F5 is we're very flexible, right? You can, especially for web application firewall, you can consume this, as virtual edition hardware. We have new things where you can consume this as a service, right? Or as a SaaS service or a managed service too. So those are things you're going to learn later on. But a key thing is understanding this key portfolio. Remember, we mentioned earlier, identity access, multi-factor, single sign-on, anything with SAML, all that, VDI access, proxying of your web application. Again, this is where you want to, determine, application security manager. Maybe you'll get a question that'll say, you're trying to integrate Active Directory with this application or single sign-on. Key words like that, you're going to know, if you know what the products do on the F5 side, you'll know which products to propose in this section, right? What to propose as a solution. And, same thing goes with DDoS protection, right? DOS protection, Leif mentioned there's some of that in our web application firewall. There's some of that in some of our other products, but understanding when it comes to like volumetric, UDP flooding or SYN flooding, we also have these products, the Hybrid Defender that we mentioned earlier, that's dedicated for that. And we also have a dedicated cloud service called Silverline DOS protection. Okay. There might be distractors on the test. Just keep that in mind. which one to position. All right. And what's hard, the time is essence in this test. Sometimes what I tell people is read the answer first, look at the question, then look at the big, paragraphs so you can pick out things quickly, right? Earlier we mentioned this, everybody was asking what's the good, better, best. Perfect slide here. You also have to determine, what you're going to propose to the customer when it comes to licensing, right? At F5, traditionally we used to have hardware appliance. You would just buy one appliance that was dedicated to local traffic manager, right? Load balancing back in the early days. But things have changed, right? Now we can consume this many ways. Since we can run multiple modules, we also have different licensing schemes, right? For hardware and even virtual edition, we have what's the good, better, best. So if you notice here on the good, better, best, good gives you local traffic manager, load balancer. Better gives you some of the options, right? Like for example, advanced firewall manager and LTM and GTM. And then the best is the one that you want to position if the customer also needs access policy manager or the web application firewall, which is ASM. So key things, understand these licensing. There's an overview of that on our website. You might get questions that where you're trying to position, which they might need this and this, but if you say the better will probably be the better fit, but you find out that you're missing another component, maybe the best is the best one for them to position as a customer.
A lot of times these are, if you have more than one component, it's almost as cheap buying the next round up.
Exactly.
Right? Oddly enough, local to the better if you're getting global traffic manager or big IP DNS. And try to remember both because I can't remember which one was on the test and when we changed the name.
Yeah.
But if you're getting local traffic manager and that, then you might as well get better because it is actually cheaper than buying them separately.
Exactly.
But you'd get all the other advanced services there, like a big IP, advanced firewall manager, advanced routing, and SDN services.
Yeah.
Which aren't as important as they were back when we wrote the test.
And it depends on the issues too, right? Because maybe your internet service provider, you need advanced routing to do BGP or something like that, right? Maybe it makes sense to get that. Depends on the industry, right? So, but no,
advanced routing is also useful if you're doing things like DDoS hybrid defender or working with advanced firewall manager.
Yes.
Something else. Well, I'm thinking of that Orlando was mentioning. Right. So you've got 3 ways to prevent DDoS. And depending on what you're doing, depending on how the question's layered, you might think about these differently, right? DDoS protection at the application level is application security manager.
Mm-hmm.
DDoS protection at the layer 3 and 4 level can be done by advanced firewall manager. Can actually even be done in hardware by advanced firewall manager, which is very efficient.
Yes.
If they need the combination of the two, or they don't have both products, or there is some other reason you're looking at this, then you're looking at something like DDoS Hybrid Defender, which is all of those, right? 3 through 7, with an interface that is different from the other two to make it easier for security folks to play with it.
Exactly. Think of it as just a purpose-built appliance just for that, with an easier GUI. Yeah. And then again, the services is another thing you got to think about, the Silverline DDoS services too. Better bring up a good point. So another thing we mentioned too, remember as we mentioned earlier, that good, better, best licensing, there's other licenses we're going to talk about, like there's subscription-based licensing and all that stuff. But these add-on modules, remember we mentioned these earlier, IP intelligence, web fraud protection. This was carrier grade NAT. We didn't talk about that, but just when you think of CGNAT, think of, telephone or ISP. They need thousands and thousands of addresses, and what sometimes they use is IPv6, like our phones, and they'll use an F5 AFM with this license on, right? So it can go out to the internet. So use it like a NATing firewall. So understand, like these modules are, are add-on. They're not included with good, better, best. Okay. Also, and then standalone products, we kind of mentioned this already, that SSL orchestrator is our SSL decryption solution, right? To decrypt traffic on the network, send it to your security devices, let them do inspection, then we can re-encrypt traffic. Leif mentioned DOS Hybrid Defender and the Big IQ. These products, all these 3 products, you can buy them as physical hardware devices, or you can buy them as virtual editions. So keep that in mind, depending on where they're going to put this on the network, how the customer's going to use this. And then, here in a key area, Section 302, how can F5 solution technology meet the customer's business needs? And this is where one thing that F5 does pretty good, that on our website, we have customer stories, they use cases. Some of our customers, that work with us, they'll publish like for example, I used to be on the reseller side, like you guys, right? I used to work back with a reseller before I joined F5. I remember one of the biggest projects I did, it was a quick launch project that I did, was the Major League Baseball television network, right? And one of the things we did that time is when they were launching this television network, they were going to put trailers with high definition video feeds coming from all the baseball fields, stadiums across the country. And they had to stand up this environment. That one of the key things that they were trying to look for a solution to do it faster and give remote access. And that particular customer, we proposed, F5 Access Policy Manager for the VPN and the F5 Local Traffic Manager for compressing the traffic and load balancing, right? And, that's an example where a customer had a problem. We mapped out which solution. That originally we're going to try a firewall solution, but it was not going to help them. But just having us propose the F5 solution, they were able to launch the station right on time. And then they started finding out, hey, we have broadcasting servers that we need to provide, failover for them because they don't do clustering. Use the F5 LTM for that. And then we also positioned the F5 DNS to load balance between the data center they had in New Jersey and the one they had in California to send people to the closest data center. So, even though that's a customer I've used, you see here, that particular customer, that story is actually up there. If it's still up there, customer storage up there on the F5 site. But definitely take a look at these resources. At least it gives you an idea at a high level, depending on the industry and all that, which products you might propose to a particular industry. Maybe it's the medical field, financial services, how we can position these products. I mean, the goal here, at F5, myself and the rest of the guys on my team, Mickey and Leif, one of the things we do, not only do we do these workshops, but we also do SC mentoring. We'll talk a little bit about that later, where we actually do one-on-one training with certain partners, with their solutions architects. Some of the guys are on the line here that have trained, where we talk about these scenarios, right? How to position this product, how to do use cases, how to sell this, how to, even if you're doing a data center migration, maybe you're doing like VMware and Cisco, hey, F5 can also complement that. So, keep that in mind, look at these. And this goes back to what I mentioned earlier, these sales plays and all that. And the key thing is, understanding how you're going to position the technology to meet those customers' needs. Things we also have to consider when we're proposing something to a customer, right? Financial aspects of it, right? Is that product going to have a good return on investment for them, right? Depreciation. So customers, due to tax purposes, they'll depreciate products over a period of time. You might have scenarios where, the customer wants, is planning to replace some old hardware. What would you recommend? Maybe the he has traditional hardware from F5. He's had it for 5 years. Now they're looking at a cloud migration strategy. Maybe you want to recommend, virtual editions, or maybe they want to do something that's going to have a lot of SSL. Which appliances you're going to recommend? You're going to see that next section. We'll get in more details on the hardware and virtual side. Capital expenses too, right? Capital expense, the way, the company needs money to spend, to buy things, right? They track that, right? For tax purposes, capital expense is a cost, it cannot be deducted in the 1 year, right? You have to do that depreciation like we mentioned. But companies are looking at moving from capital expense or CapEx to what's called OpEx, right? Or operation expense, where they can actually, maybe they're going to consume this F5 as a service or on the cloud, and they just want to write it off every year, right? Whatever they spend on it, right? That's another option, right? And again, depending, some companies might want to do things where, hey, I'm going to use this F5 product for 3 years. Maybe they want to do enterprise license that they're only going to pay for a period of time, or maybe buy what they consume, right? They could fluctuate. Maybe this year, maybe as a retailer, maybe during Black Friday, their services go up, they need more F5 to use, and then when it goes down, they want to elastically, load balance their stuff, go back down, right? So these are things to consider, and depending on the product too, depending on the customer. Maybe they need things delivered quickly. Maybe that's where virtual editions or cloud stuff might be beneficial to them.
And I believe, you guys will have to correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but we had ELAs and subscription services when we wrote this the first time.
Yeah,
So
nobody's
that's,
done this
yeah,
one.
right. So if they're interested in things like OpEx rather over CapEx, then that's when you could talk about subscription services where they subscribe to X number of VEs and they can increase that if they need to, or enterprise licensing agreements, which at this time were VE only, although we do have what we call hybrid ELA now, where they can also do an enterprise licensing for both hardware and software. But at this time, I think it was strictly, our enterprise licensing agreements were strictly VEs, where they can, they just pay for 3 years and they have these VEs and they can do whatever they want with them, and they can keep creating more as much as they want. So
Yeah.
these are the things when you're talking the difference between CapEx and OpEx, if those things come up in that.
Yeah. And again, this is all part of the proposal, right? This is all this section focuses on proposing a solution for the customer. Take into account, those things, licensing, hardware. Here, here's
Especially TPS. I will guarantee
Yes.
you will get questions on TPS.
transactions per second, TPS. Remember that. We're going to look a little bit of that on the data sheet side. But yeah, here's things, and I've been mentioning this throughout the session today, right? Things to consider, maybe you want to run virtual editions for a solution, but maybe that's not the best solution either, because maybe the customer does a lot of SSL transactions, like Leif is mentioning here, TPS transaction where it's better to propose a hardware solution than a virtual edition, or you can do one hybrid. We are also going to learn a little bit about, our other platforms that do virtual multi-processing. So you can take a physical appliance and run multiple editions of F5 within that appliance and carve it out for different departments, right? But all these are part of justifying to the customer why your solution is the best, to meet their needs, right? To meet their challenges, right? And you guys probably already do this on a daily basis with some of your customers, right? And with some other vendors too. Talking about other vendors, we also have, keep in mind, and you saw some of this in those sales play presentations. There was a tab there for competitors. Understanding your competitors, right? How F5 products competes with other competitors, right? We F5, we don't like, Mickey and Leif, we all know, we don't like to, bash other vendors, right? Or other competitors, because let's be honest with you, it depends. What we want to look for is the best solution that meets the customer, right? Sometimes in some situations, maybe you have a customer is running a NetScaler as an access gateway for their storefront, right? And then we have our solution too, but maybe because that particular department, the way they run things, they have to run it that way. So, but the F5 can also do other things, complement that, or also load balance. There's a lot of things. That's why we're very open, with a lot of the other competitors where we integrate with them, right? We take the stance that, don't attack the other vendors. You want to become that trusted advisor and show them, hey, this is what we can do versus them, and this is how we can integrate, right, with their products. And like it says here, it's always the best approach to explain how we effectively solve a problem that the customer is facing, right? The issues he's facing. I've been in situations before, even as a reseller solutions architect, where I had customers where they looked at, they were saying, oh, maybe the F5 solution's more expensive, but then they found out, like, as I explained to them what we can do, they're like, oh, wow, this product can consolidate these other stuff that we're trying to achieve with other projects. That's why it's important to understand who's the key stakeholders in the whole thing, right? Don't focus only on the network operations people, the security. You have to take into account maybe other departments like the DevOps people, right? The CTO, the company. You might find out from your discovery, like we explained in section 1, from discovering that you found out that company is merging, or they have to do a big project that's not being impacted by the company, the department you're working with that customer, that in the grand scheme, the F5 solution will cover all that. So keep that in mind. And the thing that's good about this, as you do this, you start becoming that trusted advisor to that customer, right? The go-to person. They'll come back and say, hey, we have this problem. You think we could solve this with some of your F5 products? And that's how you'd be surprised, a lot of our F5 products, even some of the products like that SSL orchestrator, that all came about as a result of our customer use case or problem that we're having, spun off a whole new product, right? Leif, you want any examples of that with some of your customers from the past?
I'm sorry, I was typing an answer to
No
a question.
problem. Okay, that's fine. No, I was saying that,
On ELAs. What was the question?
Well, I was just telling them, like sometimes understand the overall picture of what the customer.
Oh, yeah.
Position your products because like an example was SSL Orchestrator, how that came about as a customer problem, which became an iRule, which became a full functional product.
A lot of our iRules become full functional products like that, right? Um, we productize them, or in the case of SSL Orchestrator, they became their own product. And basically what happens then is that we write that into TMOS rather than trying to do it through iRules. But yeah, we've never been a FUD company. We just never done it. I've always hated it, which is one of the things I've liked about working here. I didn't have to deal with it. So, but I've done competitions between NetScaler and F5 and stuff like that. And sometimes it's like a consolidation. So I was working with the hospital here in Nebraska. They had both NetScalers and Big IPs for doing different things. NetScalers are in front of storefront, and Big IP was in front of other stuff. And they wanted to consolidate. Well, we just basically went in and said, look, we can consolidate this. We can APM can front end storefront, does a very good job. Actually, it's a great thing if your customer has something like they were looking for VMware VDI or Citrix, right? If they're looking at both of those, well, APM can front end both at the same time, right? Because we don't have a VDI, we're neutral like that. So we literally went in for that and said, look, here's how we could do, here's how you access the storefront, here's how we put everything else behind. And they ended up, moving that direction, not so much because I said NetScaler is bad. It's just that, hey, you want a consolidation? We actually went a demo and we showed them how to consolidate.
Yeah. And I think also with consolidation, also integration too. Like I forgot to mention this, and you can see this on our website, F5's website. If you go to deployment resources, deployments, right? We have information there, how we integrate with all these vendors like Microsoft, SAP, all the major applications. We've co-written some of this stuff with the vendors, their own engineers, and they've tested in their labs where, if you want to load balance Exchange servers or optimize certain web applications, we can do that. So
I put in the chat a link to all of our partner technology alliances. So
exactly,
it's all there. Lots of them.
So that going back, that ends section 3, right? So now, now in section 3, like we mentioned again, that was the proposing, right? Proposing a solution. Just as you go through the test, you're going to probably get questions like that, and you're going to see keywords or things where you're going to try to propose what's the best F5 solution for them. But in section 4 here is supporting the close, right? This is where we're going to focus on supporting closing the deal, right? Looking at, now they told you your challenge, you discovered what they wanted to do, you got educated on the products, you proposed some designs, right? This is where you're starting to put together the bomb, right? How are you gonna find, what you're gonna use in this design to solve this problem, right? This is where you're gathering things where, okay, how many F5 devices are we gonna need? Or maybe your customer is a federal agency that needs, encrypted hardware. When I mean encrypted all the way to the hard drives, the chipsets, that's what we call FIPS compliance, right? Those are things that you also have to take into consideration. Redundancy too. Traditionally F5, we always sell F5s in pairs, active standby, because we know that we're selling F5s in a critical environment where it's just running important applications. So you want to have active standby, but there are situations where you might want to do things where scale N, which means our clustering services, N+1, so you can go, you can have up to 32 devices to cluster. The N+1 basically means you have so many active and then one available as a standby so it can quickly fail over. So we're going to talk a little bit about this in this section. And this is where you get into the nitty gritty of your data sheets, right? Bringing out those data sheets. Oh, this platform will match up to that. Before we do that, think about high availability, right? We have different ways to provide high availability, failover, high availability apps. F5, if it's a virtual edition or hardware box, you can buy them in pairs. You can do active standby or active failover, right? But we also have other products, like depending on the F5 model, we have devices from the i50, 100 and above. They can do what's called VCMP, meaning that we could take a physical appliance, and within that physical appliance, think of it's like a VMware ESX host. you can have virtual instances of the F5s running inside that physical platform. But what's cool about it is that it still takes advantage of all the SSL hardware, switching, networking components that are on that physical appliance and shares it. So a perfect example, let's say I have an F5 5800. I'm running version 15 code on the base appliance, but I have a department that wants to run version 14 with the local traffic manager and APM because their application needs that particular version. So I can actually carve out an instance, give it for that department or that group of people in the company that's using that. And that can have another instance running depending on the hardware, you can run like 4 of these or 8 of these, depending on the hardware model. But if you see
that one, we wrote the test?
Yeah, iSeries was out when we did this one.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. I was just saying, I hope we don't have to tell them wrong numbers. And do understand when we're talking things about VCMP and stuff like that, especially on appliances, the 2000 and 4000 series appliances cannot do VCMP.
Correct.
Anything higher can do VMCP if it is at the higher level. Do we have a little?
Yeah, we're gonna go into that. Yeah, because especially
never mind.
no, that's good. No, you're getting ahead, but that's good. But like at a high level, 3 forms of high HA that we have. We have this VCMP virtualization. Virtual editions, they can also do active standby. We also have N+1, where we can cluster multiple F5s together. We'll talk about this. We also have, we'll talk about this. We have a chassis-based F5 that it looks like when you think in the Cisco world, you're used to your 65, back in the day, 6509 switches had like blades in them that you could put them and make the switch look like one big switch, right? We'll cluster up. Over the past years, we have new stuff like the 9000 series and all that. With F5, we actually have modular-based F5s. They're called Viprion series, where you could put in a blade. Let's say if there's a blade, one blade could probably be the equivalent of a particular model F5. You put in another one in there, and it automatically becomes like one big cluster, right? Stacked. It looks like one big box, right? So it gives you the opportunity to grow quickly and stand up the environment, and still do some of these VCMP sessions to create more instances running. But as we go through this presentation, we'll talk about that in more detail. But again, supporting clause, determine what are the high availability options that the customer needs, right? Also, as I spoke up earlier, understanding what are their needs. Do they need physical hardware or do they need virtual edition? Do they need to roll this out quickly? But taking into account, if you're going to roll this out as a virtual edition, we have different versions of that based on bandwidth. We have a lab edition that's like $99 that runs at 10 megabits. But we also have editions from 25 megs to 10 gig. And again, that's where you're looking at the customer's need and say, okay, we have a bandwidth of if your customer has a bandwidth of 200 megabits for their web traffic and they're load balancing it off the F5, then they're not going to need a 3 gig one because they're not, unless they upgrade there. They know for sure they're going to be 200 megs for the next 5 years. We always try to upsell a little for that. But here's the thing, maybe they start out with 200 megs and they grow. You can still sell them an upgrade license to increase the bandwidth too. So that's things to keep in mind. Hypervisors, we support all the major hypervisor, vSphere, your traditional ones, and then you have other ones like KVM, Hyper-V, and of course the cloud environments, AWS, Azure, and so on. We spoke a little bit of that's what I was mentioning about the VCMP. Again, anything with the i5000, 5800 and above, X800 series from 5000 above does support this VCMP feature. Here's an example, kind of like the example I mentioned earlier. Here's one physical i5800. He's running different instances of F5s on top of that hardware with their own partition. They act like their own little appliances, and some of them might have different versions or different modules running, right? Here's an example, one running LTM, GTM, and the WAF, the ASM, or some of the other features. Just keep that in mind. X800 numbering above 5,000 means it includes VCMP. How about if a customer doesn't buy that feature? Well, let's say they go with an i5600 model. That model does not have that VCMP feature. So they can upgrade that with an add-on license to make it into an i5800. All it's doing is the same physical hardware. It's just that license key is enabling these VCMP features and like some things that are there, like SSL max transactions per second, TPS, like Leif mentioned, TPS. Those are things
they are turning on CPUs and everything else. So they're basically doubling the size of the box. So
exactly
the concept behind any of this, when we're talking the iSeries or even the one previous, is that you could buy an appliance. We'd sell it to you cheaper, but we would limit what you could use on it. Like there is no hardware compression on the 5600. You have to buy the upgrade to 5800, then you get hardware compression. We turn on more CPU. We turn on more SSL chips. We do all sorts of other wonderful things. And BCMP is one of those.
Exactly. And again, one thing I wanted to show you on F5 site, and I think I put the link in here, go out and look for the data sheets. And there's a data sheet it's like a 4 or 5 page data sheet, shows you every physical appliance and what their transactions per seconds are, how much bandwidth they do and all that. Definitely download that and look at it, memorize some of those numbers, right? You might get
for the newer hardware,
especially
for the iSeries.
Exactly. So you might get questions that it has a spec that they're looking for. You have to look and decide which one you think is the best. You might get even like a table of recommendations. You got to see which one you want to position, especially with FIPS. Go out and download this, and I put it here in the footnotes. These are the particular F5 models that support the FIPS, Federal Information Processing Standard, right? Not that many vendors have this. We have competitors that sell their own load balancers or products, but they don't have the certification. That means this product's certified by the government. Sometimes these certifications include different levels, like FIPS 2 level. Level 2, for example, there's encryption. When you first set up the box, it encrypts the hard drive. Chipsets, some of them have like the chipsets protected. So if somebody tries to remove something from the component, it's tamper-proof, so it will just break the chips like that. They can't get the information. And then and there's various models. Not all the models, like we mentioned, you saw in the last portfolio, we have all these physical appliances, but not all of them are certified for FIPS. Just look for the -F or DF on some of these, okay? Anything to add with that on Leif or Mickey on the FIPS?
Nope.
No, okay.
Nope, you're good.
Here comes the licensing, which we wanted to get in a little bit deeper. Okay, going back, again, we're proposing stuff, closing the deal here. We're recommending the products that they should be putting on, right? What they should buy. Licensing, bring your own license. What's that? Well, basically, if you go to the cloud, sometimes users are not aware that they'll go out to Amazon, they'll click in, do a search for a resource, right, that they want to deploy. They'll find an F5 and just deploy it. That's called pay-as-you-go. When you do pay-as-you-go, they're paying with their credit card, and they're paying more for that license than instead of them coming to you guys as the reseller and bring in your own license, where you can actually sell them license keys, right? Sell them those license keys so they can do that. They can do their F5 virtual editions in the cloud. Or we also have the ability that if they have existing virtual editions, you can actually call support and you can migrate those existing license keys to the cloud. So that's what BYOL is. Pay-as-you-go is what I mentioned. You're paying, to do that. But you could also
But do be cautious on questions, because pay-as-you-go, it could be cheaper to bring your own license.
Could be cheaper, yeah. You're right.
There is a break point. If you're only using it for 6 months, I'm better off doing pay-as-you-go.
Exactly.
Or if I'm using it for 6 months to test, and then I want to kick into gear, then I may want to go from pay-as-you-go to bring your own license. But customers do have the options of going either route.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Because you might, look, the holidays are coming up, Black Friday's coming up, maybe that particular customer, retail location, they just want to do a pay-as-you-go for that period of time, right? That long weekend or that week or 2 weeks, and then spin it back down, right? So those things to consider. That's a good point. All right, and then the other ones, subscription. Leif mentioned this earlier. We can sell our products based on subscription if you're going to do a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan, right? And you could do it for that period. Think of it like Microsoft does volume licensing. Some of the other vendors do things like that. And then you could do enterprise licensing. Key understanding here is this one is for a longer period, 3 years, right? And this one is from 1 to 2 to 3 years. It depends. They look similar, but there's differences, right? Both products, you do have BigIQ, the centralized manager, but you only have it for licensing management, right? It includes that. If you want to do it for device management, you have to pay a different license for that. But these are all both, depending on the scenarios, you see here, subscription, if you want to do this on some of the hypervisor or cloud providers, those are beneficial. Just go, memorize these two and understand, when you want to position either or. I guess enterprise licensing, we have customers, for example, they're doing, remember we talked about CapEx and OpEx. They just want to do OpEx. They just want to know, okay, I have a budget for 3 years. I want to do, we usually do our budgets for every 3 years. So I just want to buy this subscription license for 3 years. And then when it comes back to that, then we'll change things around, right? Maybe a subscription or maybe an enterprise licensing.
And it's also worthy of note that subscription and enterprise licensing agreements come, and pay-as-you-go actually, comes with premium support, where
Yep.
bring your own licenses or appliances don't come with support. You have to
Exactly.
purchase that on top and pay for it every year.
Exactly. Bill of materials. So some of you folks probably do this on a daily basis, right? Helping your salespeople create a bomb, right? Sometimes the bill of materials, we have to go out and call. I've seen situations where we have to call back like the vendor, or maybe the vendor SC, like the field engineers that we have at F5, or even the distribution engineers. But key thing is here is understanding, how to read a bill of materials. You're going to have an example of one, right? It has F5 SKUs. But the key thing is that we're looking at, when we took this exam, look at the lines, right? Things we tend to forget, when we're building a list, right? I might know which F5s to position. Maybe I'm going to sell them a pair of quantity 2 i5800 series, but I forgot to put on there the type of cables they're using. Maybe they're in Europe. They have different electrical cables, right? Maybe number one things people tend to forget, and I tell you, memorize this, that these new F5 appliances, they come with, they don't come with SFPs. You got to add that as a line item, because those SFPs could be either copper or fiber, right? The port supports either or. So take that into account. Maybe you have a customer that has more high speed, required special cables like these QSFPs where they're doing 40 gigabits or maybe 100 gigabit. Other things people tend to forget, power supplies. Some of the appliances don't come with redundant power supplies by default. You have to add that as a line item. And understanding, and we put links to all this, support. What's the difference? Understand what's the difference between standard support and premium. That when you're creating a bill of materials, sometimes the customer might not need premium support because if they're more cost effective, maybe they want to just wait till the next day. Because when we think of standard support, that's 8x5, right? Business days, right? But they need 24/7. Then you want to consider positioning premium support for them. And those have 2 different pricing models too, right? We won't show pricing on this exam, but it's just giving an overview of what things you want to consider when you build a bill of materials.
There actually is one more level of support too, and that's 4-hour.
Oh yes, 4 hours. Yes.
4-hour RMA support.
Yeah, and that's another one too that people don't forget. I remember when I first started in IT, we used to sell Compaq servers and HP servers. They used to have these depots, 4-hour support where they can go out to a depot somewhere in your geographic area, grab you a part, like a bad hard drive. You were replacing that, bring a new hard drive, replace that within 4 hours. You traditionally still see that. But that's something that it's an add-on. If they want that, they have to pay for that premium support to do that. So it depends on them.
Todd had a question regarding HA pairs. I've had this question come up several years ago. Do the HA pair have to be the same platform? I think we can HA pair a physical and a virtual device, but I'm not sure that that's such a great idea. I'll let Orlando and Leif chime in.
Yeah, it depends, on the customer. HA pairs, definitely want to always strive to have the same appliances, right? You can take a virtual edition and a hardware edition to synchronize the config, but start getting into things like self-IP, like the interfaces are different and all that. You can sync over like virtual configs and all that. I had customers that did what's called a sync group for certain specific things like iRules or policies, but
yeah, there's 2 ways to sync, right? There's what we call sync failover groups.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's what we call sync only groups. And sync only groups do not sync things like virtual servers and stuff like that. They sync things like profiles and iRules and stuff like that. And they never did a whole bunch of them. Now, you can make different things. I can't remember, as of 13 or something like that. You can put different things together, but we would never ever recommend that. It just doesn't scale well.
Exactly.
But at one time I would do things like, okay, if you needed a bunch more because that's where the N+1 is. I have two 4,000 out there. Each of them are capable of doing 5,000 TPS per second. I need another 10,000 TPS. Well, maybe I instead add a 5,000 with my 4,000s, and then I can actually do all of it. I can put them in an N+1 configuration, right? So they fail over to each other, or applications fail over each other. So that's what happens when in an N+1. You tell what we call traffic groups, which will have all the IPs that will support a particular application. And you say you are going to run on each of these different platforms. But there's a whole bunch of things that you have to think about around load aware and things like that to make sure that things don't right. You can't have the 4,000 just failing over every application on the 5,000, maybe failing over to the 4,000 because you just don't know what's going to hit what. So there's a lot of things to be thought about there, but it can be done. And I don't think you're going to get a question that says, hey, this is a great idea, you should suggest it to a customer.
Yeah. Also, like tomorrow in your class, we're going to do HA configurations on the 201 in your lab.
And I'm sorry, there was something else on that. We do not sell standby licensing.
Oh,
so
yeah.
If I want something to have LTM and ASM on it, so I want LTM and my WAP on the same one, I buy those SKUs for one appliance. I'd buy the same SKUs for the other appliance.
Yes.
Or whatever we buy. So everything is off by itself.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen scenarios where I had a customer do that a long time ago where they brought an F5 with LTM, GTM, and the other one had LTM only, and they couldn't sync. They couldn't fit because the licensing wasn't matching. So keep that in mind. Also, the last thing I wanted to mention, this section, when you create the BOM, we mentioned, kind of mentioned it earlier, power requirements, but power cords, right? By default, our F5s, they come with what's called C19 to NEMA, NEMA 5-20P cords. It's just your standard power cords that you have in your data centers that pretty much every computer has. But take into account, if you have a data center, maybe you might have those racks that have 220 volts, right? Or have the different connectors, or maybe you're in a different country, right? Those are things to consider, especially power requirements and power cords. I've seen projects before where we were just waiting because they had the wrong power cords, right? They didn't put that into, okay. Now, I don't see it here, but sometimes, rails, I think our FIs usually come with rails, but depending on the appliance, you might need special rail. I had a customer, for example, we had standard rails, but they had rails, his rails were like half rack width, right? Rails. So you have to get special rails for that. So
one other thing to mention too is that our fiber optic module to connect a big IP platform to some other backend IO does not come with the server. You've got to buy F5 authorized IO modules, GBICs, etc. if you're going to make a connection.
Yeah, and sometimes like these QSFP ones, they're like breakout cables. They're special ones. You can go buy a third-party one, but if you're having problems, you're going to have problems when you open up a support case if it's not.
It's the first thing I tell you to take out. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions on that? Again, that was a good section. What I would recommend, go read these data sheets, get yourself familiar with the different hardware and virtual edition platforms. Now, this section, we're going to talk about ongoing support and maintenance. If you're taking the 201 class tomorrow, in that test, it kind of focuses on how you will open a support case, troubleshooting, response, and all that. But here's some of the things you want to talk about when we're doing ongoing support and maintenance, right? Determine, and I wish this was earlier, who are the key stakeholders? Remember, as I mentioned earlier, we tend to, as IT consultants or pre-sales engineers, we tend to focus with these people here, right? The developers, the department guys, maybe the IT manager, director, but sometimes we don't go above to this level. Maybe we don't have access, but this is where you want to team up with your salespeople and find out. These guys might have other projects going on, especially compliance officers. They might have to have some compliancy requirements where they have to be PCI compliant, or else they're going to get fined for doing payment card services. This is where you might want to find out these stakeholders and find out, hey, we need to talk to your guy here because, if you're doing PCI, we could help you with our F5, web application firewall and some of our other products. So also take into account these influencers, right? These people can make decisions on finalizing the product, right? Maybe you're selling an F5, i4800 series for this department, but unbeknownst to you, these guys up here are talking about a big migration to their email environment, or maybe their web applications to make fault tolerance and redundancy and optimization. You just sold a small box to these guys without talking to these guys here. Maybe they have to upsell or maybe redesign what they're going to do, right? So keep that in mind. Who are your stakeholders? Buying cycles, this is important too. A lot of those stakeholders we talked about also have different buying cycles. Maybe you're dealing with a customer, maybe it's a government entity. They do a lot of their buying at the end of the year because of budgets, right? Maybe this is a particular customer where quarterly they have to adjust their budgets because of demand. Just understanding who are these influencers. When I think when we built these questions, we did have examples of who we had to focus on and what they're proposing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll get a couple of questions on the exam on a certain scenario where you're positioning an F5 solution, and obviously to push the deal over the finish line, you're going to have to know the correct audience to speak with, and so you get a couple of questions like that.
Yeah.
What is a CIO? What is the CIO mindset versus the chief information security officer versus the chief financial officer? So I'm sure Orlando will talk about that.
Yeah. And again, here's the important. This is good as Mickey brings up. Understanding what stage of the customer phase you want to position those people, right? So early stage, you're probably talking to someone, maybe you're going out and finding out, who's familiar with that particular customer, what are they doing? But there are going to be different stages that you might be working with the IT staff, right? You might be working with other people and those other influences we talked about, right? Those stakeholders. Some of these stages you might have to do proof of concepts to show certain things. F5 traditionally we don't do a lot of POCs because a lot of our customers what kind of position want to do. But there have been situations where you have to do POCs to prove certain things, right? To show how it can scale out. Again, resources for that. Remember I mentioned earlier those sales plays, playbooks. We also have this sales play battle cards. Download that. They're awesome because these are one-page documents, and I always give them to my partners whenever I train them. I say, hey, this sheet, give this to your salesperson and yourself. Read this because this will give you an idea who you want to position. For example, here's one where this is one that's talking about a web application firewall, right? And it shows you some requirements or questions or considerations that customer might have. These are on those sheets, and they tell you how you target the CTO or maybe the IT director and all that, right? Which ones are the best position that fits for them. Maybe you might have a customer here where they want to do on-premise DOS protection, but they want to protect their stuff in the cloud. Then you might want to sell them these two solutions, right? DDoS protection with Silverline, or WAF, or depending on the situation. So you might get questions on that. Getting started series, I mentioned this earlier. Get on that, get yourself registered for partners.f5.com. We'll get you access to learn.fi.com website. So you can there's actually getting starting series where they actually have the series that go over, the core products like LTM, DNS at a high level. These are, I would say, no more than like an hour video. You go through them and it's pretty good. It even tests you like basic quizzes to just reinforce that you're learning the materials. And the same thing also, the accreditations certification that you should do like online. That's pretty good. Helps you get more knowledge of that information. Another thing also that sometimes as F5 pre-sales engineers, maybe we're new to the product. We might not know every product. Again, we're here to help you. We are your resources, right? I always, the guys on my team always tell the partners, like, we and the channel SC side, we don't work with the customers directly. We work with the partners. So you guys are our customers, right? So a lot of you tend to come to us for questions, for training, knowledge, right? But we also have other resources available. Locally, you have your F5 sales account manager and local SC. And then we also have, SMEs, specialized materials engineers, that we can reach out that go into deeper understanding of certain products, right? Even product development teams, we get them involved too, depending on the situation, right? So in the exam, you might get examples, right? Who you're going to, if you need help with certain things, training or escalating, who are you going to ask for help, right? hardware, we talked about support earlier. We talked about that standard, premium, and then that 4-hour response hardware. You gotta understand, if you were to buy a device, by default, we do have a 90-day software and hardware software, 1 year manufacturer hardware, 90-day software, right? Warranty on the boxes. But here goes what I was mentioning earlier, different type of support levels, 10x5, standard business days, right? So let's say you open up a case on a Friday and you open it up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it's like a level 2, we'll see the levels soon. Certain level case, don't expect to have an answer by the afternoon. You're gonna have to probably get a response on Monday, right? But be mindful of that. If you know that you're gonna need quick response, 24/7 support, then position to the customer premium support. We have the RMA expedited services. It's a 4-hour response. F5 does sell installation services. As a reseller, we encourage our resellers to learn how to deploy F5s and do the professional services. But I'll be honest, when I was on the professional service side, I didn't know at the time. I didn't know a lot about ASM, so we used to contract and resell F5 professional services. Right? You could use that as another resource that you could resell to your customers, right? To do that, or even Silverline, they have what's called managed WAF. We could do that too. But be mindful that those type of professional services, they're more costly. I mean, you'll make money on it too, but you're looking at, before it was 6 to 8 weeks, probably now it's like 8 to 10 weeks or more to get some of those engineers involved. But again, we're just doing this so you can understand, what do you want to position your customers. Network support centers, F5 support, again, going back to standard premium support. We have support centers, and the main ones in Seattle, but we have the follow the sun process, just like some of the other vendors where, we have key support centers in Europe, Asia, and other countries where we follow the sun. If you start on a case and you have, for example, premium support, and you have to escalate or switch over to another person, we can do that for you. Call in and open a case for that. We used to have on-demand consulting iRules. I'm not sure if we do that anymore, right? Mickey or Leif, did they get rid of that? Or did they put that
No, I think it's still there.
Okay, still there? Okay. So basically F5, if you're going to do the professional services consulting, they sell a couple things. They have specific configure your F5, 2-day engagement project that they price out. And then they have stuff where you can buy blocks of time, or if you just need iRules consulting, you could buy a set of SKU for this, where they can just go in and do remote support and create a custom iRule for the customer, or an IAP template. Again, you can resell these, and then what's good about this, even if you're a reseller engineer, if you want to tag along and shadow the F5 professional services engineer that's doing this project, they let you do that. We encourage that. Just go there. You can be on site with him or remote, same session. Because the key thing is we want to empower you guys to learn this stuff and also learn and how to deploy this for your customers, right? Because you're going to be doing that ongoing support.
Orlando, are we going to talk very generally about iRules and IAP? I don't know if did we touch base on that yet or no?
No, I think in the one-on-one we did. I'm trying to look real fast here.
Well, just to make sure everyone knows that iRules is our tool, TICL scripting tool command language ability to make other decisions, other load balancing decisions, and above and beyond what Big IP profiles do, right? Profiles help Big IP process traffic, and iRules can do really cool things like detect the type of browser you're using, and then route you to some other pool of servers. So that's neat. And you just have to know it at a high level. And then IAP, now for this test, you should probably have an IAP question or two. It's just our role-based deployment wizard. It comes with every local traffic management instance. So if you want to stand up some kind of application services, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We've got some really cool built-in templates to help you do that. So that's it. Just know that we have iRules and IAP, and you'll be fine. And
adding to that IAP template, we have templates. And again, remember I mentioned earlier that we have deployment guides, like PDFs you can download, how to deploy F5 with Microsoft Exchange, for example, 2016 server. That was co-written by Microsoft. We actually took those PDFs and made them into a template. So if you're going to deploy like an F5 to do load balancing or logging or access policy manager logging through the F5, download this iApp template, create a new iApp app, right? You will fill in, and then you will see a screen that shows you a form. And the form is a questionnaire that you can go out and get your Exchange engineer, sit down with him and say, hey, can you help me answer these questions? Okay, it says right here that we need a virtual IP for the CAS server. Are we planning to do SSL offloading of the Exchange servers, the backend CAS, right? Are we doing front-end login or dual authentication? And you just go and fill out this, what's the name of our, our Exchange server, for what, for some of the things. You fill in this form, click the finish button, and it builds you the whole F5 configuration. And it's pretty cool. That's what iApps do. We have them from different types of applications, different types of deployments. All right. Support, going back to support, understand, and the 2-1 test you'll get when you do the administration stuff, it's a little bit, they get more in detail with this, but understand the different severities, right? If your site is down, both your F5s is down, you can't get traffic flowing, that's what's called a Sev 1. And you can see the differences. If you have the right support for that, you call in, they're going to get an engineer quickly on the line to help you, right? If you have a severity 2 site at risk, meaning maybe you have 2 F5, one went down, and you're running on 1 F5, but you're still running in full production, everything's fine. That could be a severity 2. They're going to work with you, and then if it's RMA, they'll try to RMA the product. But if you're just calling for basic questions or general assistance, there are different severity levels for that. So understand the response times of these and when you would use them. You might see questions on that, because sometimes you might say, I opened up a case for information on something, right? Like how to create an SSL profile or something like that. But if you open it as a step 4 or 3, you're not going to get a response until the next day, So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I just put I did a YouTube video a few years ago on iApp. It's about 5 minutes. I put the link in the chat if you're interested.
Yeah. Also, another thing about, as you open up a case, sometimes you have to escalate things, right? Maybe you're having problems and you're not getting a response. What we tend to do is always escalate first to the F5's network support engineer that you open the case with, right? Be mindful too when you open cases. Look at it. They usually publish their times, right? Some of our engineers might be working at a different time zone, right? Keep that into consideration. If he's not responding right away, you can call in, you can escalate, you can be reassigned an engineer if you need help, right? If nothing's happening or you're having problems with the case, you can escalate to the support manager. If not, then there's different escalation levels that we can do. We can escalate to different levels. And these escalation levels, we have immediate, national support engineer, support manager. You can go as high as certain levels, right? Depending on what you're doing. So just remember some of these. I don't remember seeing a lot of this on the set. Do you guys remember seeing a lot of this, or? I don't remember. Yeah, but it's in there because I know it was part of the blueprint. Management, if you're escalating to managers, for example, network support manager from the support team, he's going to respond to you within 4 hours. And then, if it gets global, if it's something else, it's going to, different levels at different times, right?
I would just say the distinction is know the different levels, and that you've got a network support engineer and then an enterprise network engineer and manager. So there's different teams.
And again, another thing I tell people too, if the support's not helping you right away, please, as a partner, reach out to us. Reach out to the local F5 sales team, right, and their SD, even the channel. We can try to help, with you, try to turn. You never know. Sometimes we've done situations where we found that we knew about, how to fix that particular problem. We gave you a solution, or we went up the channel to try to see if we get you some help. And we just don't want to leave you hanging out there. We're here to help you out. Again, you guys are our end customers, so that's why we're here to help you. Another thing that I wanted to mention here is, maybe some of you guys don't know this, but F5, we have what's called strong box appliances, right? Demo boxes. So basically, if you want your own hardware for demo purposes, nowadays we usually tell the partners to buy virtual editions, right? But you can actually buy physical hardware devices heavily discounted. For example, you could buy yourself like an i5000 series. It'll be like $3,000 or $4,000. A regular box is over, like $25,000 or above, and then depending on the hardware platform you get. Sole purpose of these boxes is for demoing or evaluation. I remember when I first started with F5, one of the things we did was we bought a couple of these eval boxes, and I used to go when I was a sales engineer and a post-sales engineer too. I used to go out to customer sites with the F5 engineer. Since they knew we had this hardware, we used to go out and put an eval box, demo it to them, and get it on the network so they play with it. And then we'll go back, they'll order the equipment, then we'll swap it out, right? So these products only could be licensed for 30 to 45 days max, right? So don't put this into production. If you want, as an F5 partner, if you want to have demo gear that doesn't expire, we do have the capability of what's called NFR gear, not for resale gear, where you can just buy it and use it for yourselves. You can use it either for lab or production, and it's discounted too. It's not heavily discounted like a Strongbox, but NFR gear, just understand, it's for your company to use for for lab or your own production. You cannot use it to host other customers. We had a particular partner that wanted to take an FR gear and use it for MSP services, and I'm like, no, you can't do that. So keep that in mind. But key thing here is understanding whether it's a Strongbox demo. Again, you can have this as a hardware box or virtual editions. You can what's cool about this, if your company buys a Strongbox, you'll get access to create your own evaluation keys, right? And you can use this for lab purposes and for training. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we also have those VLabs, right? As I mentioned, you can download those VLabs. This is an actual screenshot of it, of the download site. You'll see once, if you have access to this as a partner, you'll see this available in the bottom. You click on this and it'll take you to the link. We'll show you all the files you can download. You can download images. There's like some Windows 2008 server images and Windows 7 images that you download that had pre-built labs, and then you put the F5 load balancer, and you can do pretty much every demo. You demo load balancing with LTM. You can do ASM, web application firewalls, APM, pretty much all the products. It's pretty good. I mean, I've used this before to train customers. And some of these workshops here, we've been doing like monthly workshops with our partners. And, this is another tool you can use where you can join these workshops or even these webinars that we give, and we talk about the products, how to position and all that. Keep that in mind. Those are another resource you could use for this. And just remember where you get these files from, right? Downloads.f5.com, not support.f5.com. It's downloads or Partner Central. Keep that in mind, especially when you take the test. iRules, we also have other tools from Dev Central that you can download, like iRules Editor. If you're not familiar with the iRules language, the Tickle language is back here. If you're not that person that doesn't, you just want to do something quickly, you can actually build some of these iRules using this graphic user interface, and it builds you the rules. Basic rules, but you can build upon that. Again, we were mentioning the sales accreditation. We mentioned that earlier. Go do that before you take this exam. Go do that. And we're going to also talk about practice exams. Pipeline. Understand the F5 sales cycle. One of the things, and as pre-sales engineers, you're probably not doing a lot of this, like the actual deal registration, all that. But it's important to understand this, because you're working in conjunction with your salesperson in your company, and you're going to be proposing things, building out the bill of materials. Understand, we have tools out there that we work with the partners. We have, if you're going to sell a hardware or any F5 product to a new customer, we always tell them, if you find this new opportunity, make sure you register the deal, right? Once they go to our partner site, your salesperson puts in the deal, the customer name, they register. That means that deal is locked in for you, and you'll be able to sell it. Because sometimes we have situations where partner A found a new opportunity, but they didn't know that partner B was already the incumbent there, right? That the existing partner that's on the same deal, that could, that could be a problem. And then also, depending on your company's level, you might be a silver partner, gold, or platinum, or authorized is the first level. There's different discounts or tiers that partners get based on their certification level. Evaluations, these are key things, just understanding as you're closing the deal, making sure you have the resources and tools available. So secret sauce, we got to the end here, right? One thing I would say about this exam, way different than the 101, 201, is less technical, is more about, daily pre-sales, positioning products, and all that. When you go take this test, when you go to the testing center, Mickey always does, I like what Mickey always says about this. If you're a morning person, schedule a test for a morning. If you're afternoon, do it in the afternoon. Everybody's different, right? I'll be honest with you, some of these testing centers, when it comes to our exams, we do them in more secure training centers, testing centers like Pearson VUE. Now we also do Prometric. But these are the testing centers that, man, you know, sometimes they're going to do a body search on you because it's so secure what they do. But they check, I mean, just to take it to this level, these testing centers are more certified than the, you know, maybe you guys go to a community college and take a test, you know, at a community college or whatever. They actually make you take off your glasses, take off anything electronic you have, your watches, you can't have a watch or anything, empty your pockets, you put it in a locker. And they check all this, you have to hand scan and all that. And what's funny is that you do that in the entrance and then you go right into the door to go into the testing room. They do that everything again to make sure it's you. So as a result of that, you know, make sure you take 2 forms of IDs, right? License and some other ID with your picture on it. When you go take the test, you know, they do give you a little, you know, drawing board, you know, like I tell people, you know, when they sit you down, they give you that, you know, that marker board. I like to do my own brain dump things I remember, just quickly jot it down. When you start the test, you know, the counter's going, you have 80 questions, 90 minutes, right? What I tell people, try to go through a test as fast as you can, mark the ones that you don't know, just pick the best answer. If you could do that, in this particular test, there's a lot of reading. So definitely check the answer and the question first before you read the whole thing. You might find out that it's asking for like, you know, one of the answers might be a salmon. Then you look up, oh, okay, this is APM, that's the right answer, whatever, right? So keep that in mind. Blueprints, you know, use the study guides. But one thing I would recommend, and we've been recommending to partners, we actually have practice exams. You know, we kind of mentioned, if you were here on the class yesterday, I would recommend buying the $40 2-pack one. You know, what's good about these practice exams? You can go through them. Some of the questions might be similar to the real test, but again, the key thing is it's showing you what areas you need improvement. It's not going to give you, it's going to give you like it's not going to give you like a pass fail, I think. It's just going to tell you, you need to improve this section or that section of the blueprint. The real exam, unfortunately, F5 does not give you that feedback on an exam. What's so a little nerve-wracking when you take these exams, the official exams, is you're in the, you know, in the testing place, you're going through the test, maybe you finish and you're like, you know, you're still trying to see if you're going to pass or fail. You hit that end button and then you just wait on the screen and it tells you to, you know, lift your hands so the person comes. You go outside, then they give you a printout if you pass or fail. Now, if you pass the test, it's actually a preliminary pass. What F5 does is once they get that pass result, they're actually going to check your test. The guys that run our certification program, they run it through a tool that kind of looks to see if somebody cheated or something. You know, somebody had a brain dump out there or something like that. Don't do it, and they'll find out. But let's say if you pass, you know, you should get your grade posted with you within 24 hours. You should see it on your certification.fi.com site. If you don't pass, if you want to take a re-attempt, you got to wait 15 days, right, for that second attempt. If you don't pass in those 15 days, you get a third attempt, you got to wait a month. And then after that, you got to wait, what, a couple months, right? 6 months or a year?
It's 45 days after the third.
Third attempt, 45 days, yes.
Yeah, 45 days. So 15, 30, 45. And then if you fail a fourth time, you're locked out of the program for 1 year.
Yeah.
And then quickly, I just was answering a question in Q&A. So you can take these practice exams from home. So I strongly recommend that you do that. But unfortunately, F5 does not authorize any in-home proctored exam testing currently. But if you have an expiring certification, that expiration has been extended until December 31st of this calendar year. And then finally, you know, because we're all dealing with the global pandemic crisis, I would stay tuned. Because quite honestly, the testing centers in my area here where I live, they are not open.
And some of these testing centers, to be honest with you, like, so they're special testing centers. You might not have, like, you're probably used to finding some in your community colleges. It might not be the situation with this. You might have to travel a little bit further in your city or town to go get to these testing centers.
Yep.
What's next? Again, if your company needs to be silver, gold partner, right? We have what's called Unity partner requirements. Like if you're a silver partner, you probably need one guy certified with the 101, taking the 101 test, and they could probably take the 202, like we're learning today, or the 201, and that will fulfill the obligation for that company, right? Plus they have other things they have to do, like there's accreditation. We need at least 8 people to do that, and some of the financial, like sales numbers and all that, how many sales they did. But gold partners too, they have different, depending on your tier, you have different levels. So this is what's great. You have the opportunity to choose. Okay, if you're a pre-sales engineer, definitely go for the 202 exam, right? If you're a guy that works every day hands-on, right, post-sales engineer, do the 201. You can still do the 202. Either one counts towards that, requirement for that Unity partner.
Yep.
But, I've had guys that say, hey, I'm not so hands-on every day, so just do the 202 or solutions architect, do that. But the 201 is good to also learn about that, right? I always recommend to get a little bit of hands-on, on the F5. So 202 is the next one that we're going to cover tomorrow. That's what we decided to do. The 201 we're going to cover tomorrow. That's what we decided to do 202 today. Tomorrow's 202 class, it's a little bit longer because you're going to get a lab with that. Depending if you can still show up for the class. If you don't have lab access, depending who the partner you're at, we can reach out to the local F5 engineer in your area, or even with us if we're in your territory. We could spin up a lab so you can go through it on your own. But again, if you pass this exam 101 and then 202, you'll become a pre-sales sales professional, right? Certified sales professional on the F5 side. These little badges, the reason you see those little badges, we also do badging at F5. So let's say you get certified and you want to publish that in LinkedIn and some of the other social media sites. We can actually go to the site and that will show up on your profile on LinkedIn. If you do the 201, you become a certified administrator. And then the next level, you have these technology specialists. This is the next level up to 300 level. You could either be LTM, DNS, ASM, or APM, and these are the ones we do. So, in order to get to this level, depending on which track you take, some of them you might need 2 of these or maybe all of them. It depends if you want to go to 400 level. God bless you if you want to be 400 level. We have one guy in our team that's 400 level. So, and I've seen in certain partners, there might be 1 or maybe 2 guys that are 400 level. But again, you will be definitely you'll be the F5 hero with all these certs. Go through that. Excuse me. I gotta take out that animation next time so it just shows all the numbers. So we mentioned next steps again. Let's say you pass the 101 or the 201 test. If you go to certification.f5.com site, you go there, you're going to see kind of like this portal. It hasn't changed too much. Here you can view your exam history. So even if you pass or fail, definitely go here. If you go in here, after 24 hours, you'll be able to click on the link and it'll show you a PDF of, if you passed or fail and how much you passed, what was the score you had. If you also want to, if you get certified, excuse me, you'll be able to go here and download your certificate, right? And then also you can track your certification history, right? Expiration date, just so you know, certifications are every 2 years that you got to renew. So let's say you just passed the 202 and 2 years later, all you have to do is go back and take the 202 exam again, and it'll renew the 202 plus the one below it, the 101. If you take a 201 test, that will not renew a 202. Unfortunately, F5, we don't, if you take an exam at the same level, it does not recertify that other exams on that level. So keep that in mind. I mean, coming from the, my past experience with Cisco, the Cisco world, you could take like a CCNA, but if you're a CCNP, all you have to do was a CCNP level exam of any technology, wireless or security, and that fulfilled that. We're kind of different what they do here. I wish they would change that. There's no continuing education credits either, like some other vendors do. On this site, you also, you can, here's a link right here to schedule the exam. Again, just first thing that definitely register on here so you get that F5 ID and you'll be able to access this. And then, I kind of mentioned this view exam history. Here's an example, like somebody passed, and you could download the score report here. If you, another thing I wanted to mention, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, you cannot go and take a 202 exam without passing the 101. So when you build the certification profile, it hooks into Pearson VUE and some of the other vendors, and it shows you like, you're only allowed to take this exam. So if you're first time, it's going to show you that you're going to take the 101. Once you pass the 101 test, then they will give you access to either register for the 201 or the 202 exam. Okay, so keep that in mind. Study guides, like we mentioned, we have the Cloud Docs link there. We have it as an online version. I think we still had a PDF version somewhere out there. Set up the VLab if you want to play, get some hands-on, but you don't need a lot of hands-on. I would recommend more study those case profiles, get familiar with the F5 products, do the accreditation training and the getting started. When you get to 201, tomorrow's class, that one's a little bit more understanding of more hands-on commands and all that. And as you get further up, it gets a little bit more difficult. So if you guys are registered for that tomorrow, definitely take advantage and attend that class. That this brings us to the end. Again, we have a lot of tools, a lot of resources. I believe Mickey and I, with some of these trainings, even though we're covering some of the high level stuff, put in some study time to this. I know you guys who do it. Buy those practice exams. It'll help you speed up and get ready for the test. What I like to do with some of our partners, if they buy 2 of them, I'll tell them, study for a week, take 1 practice test, then study more. A couple days before the test, do another practice test. Like that, you get that feel of how fast the exam, because it looks just like the real exam and the timing and all that. And then, go schedule a test. If you don't schedule it, it's hard for us because I know it's hard because sometimes we get, we have so many things we're doing that we're not the only vendor you guys work with. And, I personally have to go retake this test myself, but, definitely put it on your schedule and just commit to it and just go take it. Okay. Sometimes we do have vouchers that we give to partners, but, recently they kind of limited how many we're giving out, but the exam's $180. You talk to your employer, you can get reimbursed for that. And again, any questions, let us know. And we got Mickey, Leif, anything you want to add on your side?
No, we're good. Nice job.
All right. I appreciate you guys attending. And we're pretty good on the questions here on the queue. Okay, good.
Yeah, we're clean. I think Leif had something.
Go ahead, Leif.
No, just saying, I didn't have anything to add.
Okay, no
All
problem.
good. Thanks, guys.
And then for tomorrow, Leif, you want to tell them about the ones that have the labs? They're going to get what, invites and all that for the labs?
They should have already gotten the invites. I haven't had anybody come back. I sent them 2 emails. One saying you're going to get an invite, and here's what you'll see when you get the invite.
Okay, and check your spam folders. It might be going into your spam folders too, because I've seen that happen. All right, that's all we have for today.
They updated.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. So if you guys want, we can stop the recording, and thanks for coming out.